Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Alhamdulillahi Rabbil Alamin. Wassalatu wassalamu ala ashrafil anbiya'i wal mursalin. Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. Nawaitu ta'allum wa ta'lim wa naf'a wal intifa' wal mudhakirata wa tadhkir wal ifadata wal istifada wal hathu ala tamassuki bi kitabillah bis sunnati Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. والدعاء إلى الهدى والدلالة على الخير ابتغاء وجه الله مرضاته وقربه وثوابه مع اللطف والعافية والصلاح العاقبة وحسن الخاتمة. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدن مشراب صافي الهنية وحب غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدن مشراب صافي الهنية وحب غني. اللهم إنا نسألك علما لدن مشراب صافي الهنية وحب غني. اللهم افتح علينا فتوح العارفين وفقهنا في الدين وعلم التأويل واهدنا إلى سواء السبيل. اللهم لن قلوبنا كما لن الهجر. اللهم لن قلوبهم كما السلام. اللهم لن قلوب جميع كما السلام. اللهم اصلح النية. اللهم اصفي قلوبنا مع هذه النية بكل نية صالحة إلى حضرة النبي. اللهم صل وسلم وبارك على سيدنا محمد وعلى آل سيدنا محمد. الفاتحة. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين الرحمن الرحيم مالك يوم الدين. إياك نعبد وإياك نستعين. اهدنا الصراط المستقيم صراط الذين أنعمت عليهم غير المغضوب عليهم ولا الضالين. آمين. Alhamdulillah. Good morning to everyone. I would like to welcome everyone for today's session, which is on Fiqh for Women, Blood and Discharges, an introductory session. Thank you for joining us on a weekend, and I'm happy that you are putting in effort to actually learn about this topic, which we will be having for about 4 hours, all right? So it's going to be a very long session because there are so many things for me to explain. And before you start asking questions with regards to the topic on blood and discharges, on bleeding, on menstruation, on irregular bleeding, it's best that you follow through the whole session, okay? And afterwards, I'm going to open up for Q&A at the end of the session, maybe an hour before we end the session. I'm going to open up for Q&A. So if I'm explaining, okay, it's best for you not to write your question first. Maybe you can just put it aside, maybe just write it aside first, because along the way you might be getting answers to your questions. But after I finish explaining, if you find that there are things that there are some matters that you are still confused about, so you might want to ask me at the end of the session. Okay, so just let me explain for the first 3 hours, and we're going to have breaks in between. Okay, we're going to have breaks in between so that we can have some toilet breaks, relax our mind, because it's going to be a very complex discussion or complex explanation, and it requires a lot of thinking. One thing about this subject is it's difficult, okay, and it's draining as well. So you have to, maybe you might want to prepare water with you, okay, because it can be quite a headache as we go on. The more that we learn, the more in depth that we go through, the more difficult it might get. So if in the middle of the session you feel that you have other things to do, you have other appointments, you can just leave the session, because we're going to have I've already recorded this session. Okay, so not to worry. If you need time to listen back, we have the recording, inshallah. My friends, Ustazah Raudo will email to you the recording, but please allow us about 3 working days for my friends to actually pass you the recordings for you to revise. Now, let's start. Inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala Sayyidina Muhammad. So if you see here, I've already shared the screen. Okay, you can see the cover of our notes. I believe that Ustazah Raudo has already given, all of you have already emailed to you the notes. Okay, so I'm going to use the same notes. I'm going to use the same slides, but with elaboration, okay? Because if you just read the notes, you might misunderstand the notes. You might be more confused just by reading it. So that's the reason why we're having this session, so that I can elaborate further, okay? Because most of the pages need elaboration. Okay, so before that, I would like to introduce the book, okay, the reference. We call it the reference. So when you learn about Islam, okay, or when you learn about Islamic studies, Islamic sciences, you have to understand it's not something that we can just learn it from Google, for example, without any teacher. Okay, you just read and then you find that, okay, just by reading I can understand, because we can actually misunderstand some of the topics or some of the explanation just by reading without a teacher explaining to you. So that's the reason I'm opening up this session, so that I can make you understand, or if you have any questions, I can immediately answer to your concern, to your questions. So that's the reason why I need to have a disclaimer. Okay, I need to tell all of you, I need to inform, this is very important, that whatever that I'm teaching here, there's a reference. Okay, it's not that I'm just following my heart. It's not that I'm teaching you just by reading on my own. No, I've been learning about this topic, about specifically on this topic of bleeding, since years ago. That means I've been the first time I really studied this topic in depth, it was in 2003. So that was like almost 20 years back. Okay, so I've learned from teachers, and and this is the book that I'll be using. It's called Al-Ibana wal-Ifada fi Ahkam al-Hayd wal-Nifas wal-Istihada ala Madhab al-Imam Shafi'i. So if after learning, and then you find that, and then when you, maybe you teach your family members or your friends, or maybe there are people asking you questions, and then you explain to them whatever that I've explained to you, and if they feel that it's if they ask you, okay, where did you get all your information from? So you can quote my name, and of course you can say that my reference is this book. So this is an Arabic book. Everything is in Arabic. So that means I've been learning it with a teacher, with teachers, in fact, in Arabic. And then, okay, what you need to know also is that this is the book on the rulings of menses, on the rulings of postnatal bleeding, and the rulings of irregular bleeding, um, using the madhab, or following the madhab al-Shafi'i. So if you ask me, are there any other opinions besides Madhab Shafi'i? The answer is yes. Because we have the popular opinions that we know, that we've been hearing, that we've been listening about. Okay, there are four, the major opinions, the major school of thoughts, we call it. And we are following the Madhab Shafi'i, because in this regional Southeast Asia, most of us, we are following the Madhab al-Shafi'i. And if you ask me, like, is there any significant, what's the importance of following madhab? Okay, that will be in another different topic. The topic is on madhab. Why do we have madhab? So I do not have time to explain to you further on madhab itself. But what I need you to understand, that whatever that we're learning today in this session, inshallah, it's based on the school of thoughts of al-Shafi'i. Okay, Fiqh al-Shafi'i. So if you come across other opinions, okay, you cannot just dismiss those opinions, because there are many opinions with regards to this. But you do not be worried. Okay, do not say that there are so many opinions, I don't know which one to follow. It's easy, actually. Follow the one that you have learned. That's the reason why learning is important. You learn first and then you follow. Okay, you learn first and then you follow. Now what you're learning is, or based on the Fiqh Shafi'i, and then you just follow this. If you say that I think I want to follow Hanafi, learn the Hanafi school of thought first, and then you can follow. I mean, the only way that we can follow other opinions is by seeking the information, seeking the knowledge first. Then you can actually follow those opinions. But without learning, you just follow without learning. That will cause problems later on, cause more confusion. Okay, so now what we're learning is based on this book, Al-Ibana wal-Ifada. Okay, this is a book solely on the fiqh of bleeding, fiqh of bleeding. All right. So if you want your reference, this is your reference. So if you want if people ask you where do you get the information, the knowledge from, you can quote my name. Okay, because I have teachers that I've been learning from, so I can quote their names as well. Okay, now let's move on. So okay, as you can see, the fiqh for women, blood and discharges, and introductory. When you talk about fiqh, there are so many topics within the fiqh itself. The fiqh is a subject. Fiqh is a subject, and it's been written, it's been explained by scholars, by past scholars. When we talk about fiqh, the subject fiqh, okay, we cannot find the subject fiqh in the times of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, when the companions, they have issues, they have complex issues, they have questions, they would immediately consult Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. They could straight away get answers from Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. After the passing on of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, uh, they would refer, okay, they would refer to the companions of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one of the Ummahatul Mu'minin, okay, the wives of Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and one of the faqihah. If we learn the history, one of the faqihah means a person who is well versed, faqihah, who is well versed in the Islamic law, in the Islamic rulings, in the Islamic sciences. Okay, one of the scholars was actually Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha. So she, many of our fiqh or rulings, we got it from our ummuna, from our mother, that is Sayyidah Aisha radiallahu anha. She's one of the most intelligent as well as knowledgeable person at that time. Even the companions, even her own father consulted her with regards to the rulings. So we got it from, definitely from Prophet Muhammad SAW, and then we got it from the companions, and then after that we have the people who came after the companions. We call them the tabi'in, and then tabi'in, and then one of the tabi'in or tabi'in are our ai Okay, ai means our scholars, our imam. One of them was Imam Malik radiallahu anhu. Imam Malik radiallahu anhu. That's where madhab Maliki was founded upon, and then he was the teacher of Imam Shafi'i radiallahu anhu. And then we have Imam Shafi'i. He taught us about the rulings based on the Quran, based on the Sunnah, based on situations, etc. And then until more than a century, now we are still learning. So we are passing down the knowledge. So what I'm doing for today's session is I'm passing down you the knowledge so that you can pass down to your daughters, so that you can pass down to your siblings, to your friends, all right? As long as you learn, it's fine. As long as you learn, you can revise back. Okay, you listen properly, and then after that, you can show them the notes. One thing about the notes, I don't mind you sharing, as long as it's not for commercial use. For personal use, that means you want to share with the people around you, your beloved ones around you, I don't mind. As long as you have to include with explanation. You do not just give the notes without explanation. But once you give them the notes, you will share the notes, you have to give them the explanation. So that's the only amanah that I need from all of you. But for commercial use, it's not. For distribution, for commercial use, that is not allowed. Now, before we enter the subtopic, okay, so we have fiqh. okay, fiqh taught to us by past scholars, by our past predecessors. And then after that, under the fiqh, the subject of fiqh, there are many topics. So we have the topics of tahara, we have the topic of ibadat, and then under the ibadat we have the topic of tahara. Okay, ibadat means on acts of worship, and then tahara means purification. And besides that, under there are other topics as well, like munakahat, okay, the rulings on marriage, for example, the rulings on divorce, for example, on talak. And then we have the rulings on janayat. Okay, but janayat means uh, I mean, in Malay, it's jenayah as well. Okay, janayats. And then there are many topics under the umbrella of fiqh. So now, when we talk about bleeding, blood and discharges, it's under the topic of tahara, purification. Okay, but it's an elaboration. I believe that most of you have learned this before, bab tahara. Okay, you might learn it from other asatiza, other ustazats, from your madrasa, or from your weekend madrasa, or from your parents, from your grandparents, from other ustazats and asatiza. So I believe that all of you have heard the word tahara. Tahara means purification. Before we enter salat, before we enter prayer, we have uh, to learn the purification first, because without purification, okay, your prayer will not be valid. So that's the reason it comes together. Okay, it comes together. Both comes together. Okay, the purification as well as the prayer. So if you want to learn about prayer, if you want to learn about acts of worship, ibadat, you have to understand that purification is important. And bleeding and discharges is under purification. It's under tahara. And then we learn about menses. Okay, now menses, the minimum is yom wa layla, or 24 hours. The maximum is 15 days. Usually we only learn that. Okay, and then what's the minimum age for men's, etc. So those are just the basic of it. But when you talk about bleeding, it's actually more complex than just that basic. And that's what we are learning. Okay, we're going to go deeper. And again, I'm telling you, it's going to be more complicated. And if you cannot understand now, you might want to revise through the recording. So not to worry, I'm going to pass you the recording. Okay, so so we just try our very best. I will try my very best to teach all of you within the time frame of 4 hours. Okay, I will answer to all questions that you have, that has been that you find it confusing, okay, with regards to bleeding. Okay, I will answer all questions, inshallah. And later on, okay, later on, if you have problems with irregular bleeding, we have more classes. Okay, there's not really more. We have just another one session, which is on irregular bleeding itself. Okay, that is the advanced. Now, this is just the introductory. Why did I want to start off with introductory? Because I've received a lot of questions on menses, on bleeding, but the questions are not navigated. For example, like they ask questions, but I cannot answer. If you simply give me questions, like for example, Ustazah, I've been having my mens for 20 days, for example, for 20 days, and then, but it's only spotting. What are those? Are those irregular, or are those bleeding irregular? Or it's mens? I cannot answer you. I cannot just answer you which is irregular, which is mens, because there are many things that we need to learn. Okay, many knowledge that we need to know, many information that we need to know in order for us to give ruling to that bleeding. So I cannot answer. So if someone give me questions like, what is the spotting? I'm sorry, I cannot answer you that. But what I need you to do is to learn, like what you're doing now. Learn first, and then after that, ask questions. We cannot take questions before you learn. Okay, we cannot take questions before you learn. So now your end, you have to put in the effort to learn. And then our end, the asatizah's end, the ustazah's end, we will only take questions if you have learned. But if you ask us questions and then you never heard of never went through any lessons on bleeding, it's very hard for us to just answer your questions through typing. You will, number one, misunderstand. Okay, number two, it'll be more difficult for you. Number three, it's going to be a never ending, never ending, what do you call that? Not explanation, but it's going to be a never ending thread. Okay, that means you ask me questions, and if I were to answer you, and then you will be more confused. Like, what do you mean by that, Ustazah? I mean, I got that a lot. If I answer questions and the person has not gone through any lesson, they will ask you like, I don't understand what you mean by that. If you don't understand what I mean by that, you go to the lesson first, and then you can ask questions. That's the reason why I really applaud all of you for taking the time to actually learn. And after that, if you want to ask me questions, ahlan wa sahlan, it's fine. Okay, that's the reason why when people ask me questions on bleeding, the first question that I will ask is, have you gone through lessons? And it does not necessarily the and it does not necessarily mean, okay, the question the lessons that you've learned, okay, that you've learned must be from me. No, you can learn from other ustazat, because I have friends who've been teaching the same topic as well, and we have the same book. Okay, we are learning from the same book, we are learning from the same teachers. Most of us, we are learning from the same teachers. So I will ask you questions. um, um, I will ask you, have you learned this lesson? Okay, so now let's learn about the 4 types of vaginal discharges. Before we enter about bleeding, let's go through the subject on vaginal discharges. They are different. Okay, so women, we discharge not only bleeding, but we discharge vaginal discharges that is not bleeding. So there are 2 types. One is bleeding, the other one is just discharges. All right. Now, bleeding, there are only 3 types of bleeding. We're going to go there. We're going to get there soon. But for vaginal discharges, there are 4 types. Okay, at least according to the book that I've learned from, according to the teachers that I've learned from. But if you've heard from other asatiza or other ustazah, if you're telling me that, you know what, I've learned from this ustaz or this ustazah, and she or he says that there are only 3 types, okay, and so be it. Okay, it depends on the teacher that you have learned from, and I cannot say that they are wrong, okay, and they also cannot say that I'm wrong. Because one thing about fiqh, there are so many opinions. Now, which one for you to follow is the one that you are very certain on. Okay, you're feeling yakin. Okay, the word is yakin. Okay, you're very certain with this opinion, and then you just follow it. So now you're learning the opinions from Madhab Shafi'i, so you just follow. You're learning from me on the 4 types of vaginal discharges, and then you have the knowledge already. I'm passing you the information, I'm passing you the knowledge. So you just follow based on the knowledge that that you have with you at the moment. Now, the 4 types of vaginal discharges, this is not bleeding at all. These are not bleeding at all. So we have wadi, madhi, mani, rutubatul farj. All of these are in Arabic. So wadi, madhi, mani, rutubatul farj. These are Arabic. These are Arabic words. And I cannot translate it into English because there's no English word for it. But what I can do is to give details, or to give a statement on each and every word. Wadi, okay, it's called vaginal discharge. Mazi, it's called vaginal discharge. If you translate it, mani is called vaginal discharge as well. All right. Mani, okay, mani, maybe there's a word for it, and also rutubatul faraj, it's vaginal discharge. So everything is vaginal discharge. Okay, so I'm going to elaborate one by one. I'm going to just go through briefly. Okay, and after this, I will straight away go to the bleeding part of it. Now, wadi and madhi, this is considered, okay, wadi is considered, madhi is considered as najis, impurity. That means if you discharge wadi or madhi, and it's on your clothes, okay, for example, you're using panty liner, for example, and then you discharge wadi, you discharge madhi or mazi, okay, you have to discard that panty liner. You have to throw away that panty liner before you can actually do your prayer. Because if you bring a wadi or mazi into your prayer is not valid. Okay, now when we talk about this part, the tahara, about the mazi and the wadi, and what nullify the prayer or what nullify the wudu, okay, the ablution, that one will be in a different topic, okay, because I cannot, there are so many things for us to learn, so I cannot explain to you everything, okay. So this will be under purification. Now, if you want to know more about the purification itself, on what nullifies the wudu, the ablution, what nullifies the salat, you might want to go to Alwafa's FB, okay. They have already pinned, there's a pin there, the pin up at the timeline of Alwafa. Alwafa is ALWAFA 110. Okay, there you can get my recordings on the on Najis and Hadath. There are two languages. I've taught in Malay and I've also taught in English. There are two, so it's based on your level of comfort. You want to listen about the purification in Malay, God, in English also. There's an explanation in English. So it will require about 2 hours of listening time. So you might want to go to that FB and then you get the link. Okay. So I'm gonna type up the FB here. Okay, you just go there and then you can listen on purification. That one is you just, I mean, no charge lah. You just listen to it as long as you understand, then it'll be great. Okay, now. So wadi and mazi is najis. Okay, when you talk about najis, listen to my lecture on purification, and then you get what I mean, what I mean by najis. And mani is not najis, and then rutubatul farj. Usually, most of women, we experience rutubatul farj and we thought it's wadi and mazi. For rutubatul farj, okay, it's just a moisture of vagina. You feel wet because your vagina is perspiring. Okay, your vagina is sweating, so it's a perspiration. So usually when we have that, we thought that, oh, we're having wadi, when actually it's not wadi, it's just rutubatul faraj. And then after that, and then if you're having your ablution, if you have your wudu is still valid. You can actually do your prayer when although that you discharge rutubatul faraj. Okay, let's go through one by one. For wadi, okay, for wadi, a liquid discharge due to lethargy or stress or carrying heavy objects. Okay, between wadi and rutubatul faraj, okay, usually when women discharges, it might be wadi or it might be rutubatul faraj. It's either or. Why? Because if it's mazi, there's a reason why you discharge mazi. If you discharge mani, there's a reason why you discharge mani. Mazi will be discharged by a lady, by a woman, only if that person is sexually aroused. That is mazi. So if you're just doing your daily activity, you know that you're not having any sexual arousal. Okay, you're not discharging out mazi. So mazi only happens if you are sexually aroused. If a lady is sexually aroused, and it's not ejaculation, it's just arousal. Now that is mazi. And how's the character of it? Okay, so this is the character, below is the character. So mazi, the character of it is light, liquid, white and sticky. At times it's not white, it's translucent. Okay, and it'll make someone, okay, I believe that all of you are ladies, so I'm going to be as explicit as I can, because one thing about learning this topic, you have to be very explicit so that you can I mean, all of us are ladies. I mean, all of us have discharges, so I don't think it'll be something that is inappropriate. It's something that you need to know. Okay, light, liquid, translucent, white and sticky. So when you're sexually aroused, okay, you're going to discharge mazi, and it'll make you very wet. Okay, so if you ask me, sexually aroused, how can I be sexually aroused? That one I cannot explain to you, or cannot elaborate. So as long as you know that you're in that state, you know that you're having mazi. Now, and then mani. Money only happens if you are ejaculating. And one thing about the difference, because not only ladies, men, they discharge money as well. Men, they discharge mazi as well. Okay, mazi and money, men discharge them as well. But rutubatul farj and wadi, they don't discharge. Men do not discharge wadi and rutubatul farj, but mazi and madi, they also discharge these discharges. Okay, men and ladies. For money, for men, okay, men, when they discharge money, it's very apparent, it's very obvious, it's milky white. But for ladies, the characteristic of the money, it differs from one lady to another. Okay, so at times it's yellowish color, at times it's translucent, at times it's other colors. Okay, so we can never know. All right, because one thing about money for ladies is it's not easy for ladies to actually ejaculate. Of course it happens, but it's not as easy as it's not as obvious as men. If men, it's the characteristic is very obvious. Now money only happens just like mazi only happens when a person is actually aroused, but money only happens when a person ejaculate. Okay, so that's about it that I'm gonna explain on mazi and money. Now I want to get to wadi and rutubatul farj. So on for our daily lives, when we go to work, we go to school, we do activities, our daily activities, we will find ourselves having discharges. Okay, not everyone, but most ladies, we will find ourselves having discharges. So what are these discharges? We might ask ourselves, what are these discharges? Are these discharges najis, okay, impurity or not? So for our daily lives, if we discharges, it might be wadi or it might be rutubatul farj. It's easy for you to differentiate actually, and you have to have that certain. You don't have one thing about fiqh. When you learn, you have to have the yakin. Yakin means certainty. Okay, do not once you have waswas. Okay, a person who has a lot of waswas, it means that the person is not learning it properly. Because one thing about fiqh, one thing about Islamic sciences, once you've already learned, you have the yakin, not the waswas. A person who has waswas means the person is not learning it properly. Now, once you have the knowledge, you have to be very confident, very certain that I have the knowledge already. Bismillah. I think I am certain that this is wadi. I'm certain that it's tutul pada faraj. Whether you're right or wrong, okay, no one can judge you except Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And one thing about right or wrong, okay, after you have learned, Allah see that effort. Okay, if we are wrong, we will not be accountable. Okay, although that we have to keep on learning. Okay, but if we are wrong, but at the same time we have already learned, and then we are certain, and then it turns out to be it turns out that we are wrong. Okay, that part only Allah can judge, and do not worry about accountability as long as you have learned, as long as you have put that into action. After getting the knowledge, inshallah, Allah will accept it, or it's understood lah, it's understood. But if you do not seek the knowledge, you do not learn, you just you just be robust and just follow your instinct and all that. Okay, that should not be the case. Okay, in Islam you have to learn first, and then you put in what you have learned into rulings. Okay, now you're learning. Now what's the difference between wadi and rutubatul faraj? Wadi, it happens when you are stressed, when you're active, when you walk a lot, when you are doing sports, you uh, you stand up. Okay, you stand for a long period. Okay, all of these activities can cause you to discharge wadi. Anything that is strenuous can cause you to discharge wadi. Anything that's strenuous, or besides doing activities, you can also discharge wadi if you are in a state of ovulation. That's one of the ways that we see, that we know that we are ovulating, is when there is wadi. So ovulating period can also make a person discharge wadi. So apart from activities during ovulation period, you can discharge wadi as well. And wadi, there's a characteristic to it. There's a characteristic to it. It can be, it's very thick. I'm sorry, I need to be explicit here. At times it looks like phlegm. If you know what phlegm is, phlegm when you cough, right? And then there's phlegm in your lungs, or if you have you have phlegms in your lungs and then you cough it out, and it's very thick liquid. That is a phlegm. All right. So wadi, it looks something like that. I'm not saying wadi is a phlegm, but it looks something like that. It's thick. That means when you take it out, okay, you can actually hold it. You can hold it. I'm sorry, I'm being explicit so you can understand. And it can be yellowish, it can be translucent as well. At times it's cloudy white. But if you keep on getting wadi, wadi means this if in Malay, okay, I think you've heard of it. In Malay, it's called keputihan. Keputihan. If you're having this keputihan, this wadi, this discharge every single day without stopping, and then you said that it's very difficult, Ustazah, for me to do my prayer every time I have discharges, you might want to see the doctor, because it can be, at times we thought that it's wadi, but it can be a fungal infection. It can be a fungal infection because wadi, okay, wadi is not being discharged every single day. Only when you're doing activities, strenuous activities, or only when you're ovulating, then you can have this type of discharge and it's normal. But if you're having it every single time, like I've just cleaned myself from wadi and then the next hour I have another wadi, you might want to see the doctor and you might want to take medication to address that problem. Okay, because having wadi every single moment is very stressful and it's very difficult for you to do your acts of worship, especially prayers. Okay, so it's thick liquid, cloudy white or yellowish. Okay, and at times it has a smell to it. Okay, it has a smell to it. All right, so that is wadi. But what is the rutubatu faraj? Rutubatu faraj is moisture. So if you find, if you're wearing panty liner or if you're wearing panty and then you find yourself wet, and you know that it's not the what wetness from mazi, because mazi only happens when you're sexually aroused, but you're doing your activities, you're working, you're sitting down a lot. Okay, especially in Singapore, we are a humid country, so when we keep on sitting down and then we find that we are perspiring at the vagina part, there's moisture. Okay, that is not wadi, that is just rutubatul farj. That means if you're having your ablution, if you have your ablution at that time, your ablution is still valid. That means tak batal, it's valid. Okay, it's not nullified. And excuse me. And you can bring that to solat. That means you don't have to change your panty, you don't have to change your panty liner, because if you have discharge from wadi or mazi, you have to change your panty liner, you have to change your panty if it gets to your panty. Okay, because you cannot bring that najis into the solat, but not rutubatul faraj. So most of the time, our daily lives, if we know that we're not sexually aroused, if you know that we are not ejaculating, that means it's either we're having wadi or rutubatul faraj. Okay, so what's the difference? Now, what's the difference between wadi and rutubatul faraj is at the characteristic of the discharge. And then again, you have to be very certain once you already have the knowledge. I cannot show you the picture because I cannot find any pictures online, and I'm not going to take any pictures of it as well. But I believe that all of us are women here. All of us have gone through this type of discharges. Okay, we might want to start learning, put it into practice. I mean, if we like because I'm teaching about it. Okay, I used to look at the characteristic. Only that I did not take picture of it. So that's how I learn. Okay, now I think I'm done. I'm done because I need to go go through the bleeding. This is most important. I mean, these are important to vaginal discharges. Why is it important? So that you know that women do not only discharge bleeding, but we also discharge other discharges apart from bleeding. So for vaginal discharges, at least what I've been learning from our teachers, there are 4 types of vaginal discharges. All right. But if you hear from other asatizah, the ustazah saying that I've never heard of rutubatul faraj, never mind, just let it be, because as teachers, okay, we might be learning from other sources as well. Okay, I mean, our teachers are different. Some of our teachers are same, but we might have different teachers. So I have, this is my part of knowledge, and we are limited. Okay, not every, no, I cannot know everything. Okay, maybe this knowledge that I know, there are other knowledge that I don't know. Definitely there are the knowledge that I don't know. So now you're learning from me. So I'm telling you that there are 4 types of vaginal discharges. Now let's go to the next one, the 3 types of bleeding. Now, 3 types of blood from a women's, from our uterus, okay? We have head, we have nifas, and we have istihada. So head, I already translated everything, okay? Because again, I refer to the book Al-Ibana wal-Ifada. It's in the Arabic. So everything is in text form. There's no visuals at all in the book of Ibana wal Ifada, because the scholars there, they explain everything through writing. So the person who wrote the book wrote it in Arabic in text. So I prepared notes based on the book and I put it in visual so that it'll be more easier for you. It'll be easier for you to understand, and it'll be easier for me to explain as well. So head is menstrual bleeding, nifas is postnatal bleeding, istihada is regular bleeding. Are there other types of bleeding? So far, even from other school of thoughts, there are no other types of bleeding except for these 3: head, nifas, and istihada. All right, head, nifas, and istihada. So far I've never come across, because I've learned all the other mazhab as well. Okay, but what I'm giving you, what I'm explaining to you is only on fiqh, madhab Shafi'i. So from my reading, from my learning, I did not come across more than 3 bleeding, even from other school of thoughts. Now we have head, we have nifas, and istihada. The difference that the school of thoughts have, the differences that they have among the scholars of different school of thoughts, are only the part where the duration part of it. Okay, for example, I'll just give you a brief example. For nifas, okay, for madhab Shafi'i, the school of thoughts of Imam Shafi'i, we see nifas, the period of nifas, okay, for the minimum is lahza. Lahza mean briefly. For the maximum of nifas is 60 days. That is only in madhab Shafi'i. But other madhab, their maximum for nifas is 40 days only. That means anything that goes beyond 40 days, that school of thought considered the bleeding as irregular bleeding, as istihada. But for Shafi'i, madhab Shafi'i, as long as it remains within the period of 60 days, with some syarat, okay, with some rules, all right, as long as within the 60 days period, it's considered as nifas. Okay, if we exceed to 50 days, if you ask me what bleeding is it, okay, it's considered as nifas. But again, there are other rules within that 16 days of that period of 60 days. Okay, we're not learning about nifas because again, there are so many things to learn, and I'm putting aside nifas first. Okay, but you need to know, I just need to make you understand. Other opinions are different based on the period. So if you say that, I've heard this one ustaz said that it's 40 days of nifas, just 40 days. Anything that goes beyond 40 days means it's istihada. The answer is true, because that is based on other opinions. All right, but again, we are learning madhab Shafi'i, so we follow the madhab Shafi'i. If you want to follow, I want to follow the 40 days, fine, ahlan wa sahlan, please go and learn the opinion that says that it's 40 days, and then you can just follow. One thing about following, you cannot just follow, you have to learn first, and then you have the confidence to follow. All right, so head in madhab Shafi'i, okay, it's just menstrual bleeding, it's normal. Normal bleeding is natural, and it's something that that women went through, okay, or go through. All of us, I believe that all of you have experienced menstrual bleeding, so you get what I mean. What is the meaning of menstrual bleeding? And then we have postnatal bleeding. It only happens if a person delivers a baby or fetus. Okay, it's after delivery. It's after delivery. So you cannot say that you're having a nifas, postnatal bleeding, without delivering anything. Okay, without delivering a baby or a fetus. Okay, and that fetus or that baby can be alive or can be not. So it only happens after a woman delivers. And istihada, this is where the complexity is. That means the irregular bleeding, that you know that it's not a menstrual, it's not postnatal. Then what is the bleeding if it's not menstrual and postnatal? That is the irregular bleeding. Again, we're going to go step by step. I'm not going to jump immediately into irregular bleeding because the complexity lies at the irregular bleeding. Menstrual bleeding is easy, postnatal bleeding is easy as well. Now, about menstrual bleeding, in Madhab al-Shafi'i, in the fiqh of Madhab Shafi'i, the scholars have written that the minimum age for a woman to experience menstrual bleeding is 9 years old of Hijri. 9 years old of Hijri. Again, 9 years old of Hijri. So if you have a daughter, if you yourself experience bleeding at the age of 9 years old, do not panic, because that is natural, that is normal. Actually, in the times of Prophet Muhammad SAW, okay, most ladies, not only at the Arab world, around the world. That's the reason why when we read history, we find that why are these girls, they got married so young? Actually, the reason is why it's not, they are not girls, they are women already. And it does not only happen in the Arab world, it happens worldwide. If we find that if we read about girls, women that got married at a very young age, 11 years old, 9 years old, they already got married. Actually, it's normal during that time. Even the time of, like, the Victorian times, for example, the the other places in Europe, not only in the Arab world, they got married to younger girls, but also in the Europe world, the girls married at a very young age. So it does not really focus on the Islamic world or the Arab world only. It happens worldwide, and it's something that is normal. That is that time. But today's time is different, because whatever it is, we follow our current time. So you do not follow the past time, okay, the past, but we follow our context, our current times. So again, in fiqh, that's the reason why the scholars wrote down in books, and the teachers have been teaching us, that the natural age for a person to experience menstruation is 9 years old Hijri, the calendar of Hijri. So if you see, there's Gregorian calendar, there's Hijri calendar. Usually, if you find that, my child, she's only 8 years old plus, Ustazah, and she already experienced bleeding. Should I be worried? You have to look at the calendar first. You have to look at the calendar, whether she's already 9 years old in the Hijri calendar. Hijri calendar is Islamic calendar. So for example, if the girl is 8 years plus Gregorian calendar, or 8 years old Gregorian calendar, most likely she's already 9 years old using the Hijri calendar. So you have to check that. But if you check and you find that, but I've already looked at the Hijri calendar. My child is only 7 years old. My child is only 8 years old, not yet 9 years old. What bleeding is that? That bleeding is considered as irregular bleeding, istihada. And you might want, if it's regular bleeding, that you might want to go and see doctor. Ask your child to see the doctor to see whether there's, because irregular bleeding means there's something happening inside your body. There's something irregular happening inside your body. So it's best for you to bring your child to the doctor and to see whether everything is fine. Okay, it does not mean that there's a problem. No, just be safe. Okay, I'm asking you to just play it safe lah. All right, but if you find that my child is in primary 3, she's 9 years old, you know that she's 9 years old, Hijri calendar, and you find that she's really experiencing health, okay, as menstrual bleeding, do not panic. Okay, because why? That is considered natural. And once you're having your menstrual bleeding, it shows that you are healthy. The problem is if you do not experience menstrual bleeding, okay, you might want to get yourself checked as well. All right. So it's natural, it's healthy, and do not be panic if you find your child or your grandchild experiencing it at an early age, because scholars have written it very clearly that 9 years old is normal, is natural for a lady to have the menstrual bleeding. And then you can read this up, okay? Nifas and istihadah. I'm not going to go further on nifas. And irregular bleeding, I'm going to explain on irregular bleeding, but just briefly. Later on, few pages I've written about irregular bleeding. But if you're having, or if you're experiencing irregular bleeding, you might want to join me in another session where I will be focusing only on irregular bleeding, focusing on it. Because if you're not having irregular bleeding, okay, it's very difficult for you to actually get the idea. But if you just want to learn for the sake of knowledge, ahlan wa sahlan, you're welcome to do so. Again, I cannot just answer you through DM, through typing, without you learning. At least when you learn, you know how to question, how to give questions. After learning, you know what question for you to actually ask the teachers, the ustazahs. Now, the duration of menstrual flow. I'm going to finish up about, okay, just I'm going to take 3 more pages and I'm going to have a quick rest, okay, a quick recess, inshallah. The duration of menstrual flow, we're talking about heat only now, okay? We're talking only about heat. Hold on now, let me spotlight. Okay, I'm only explaining about heat. We're not getting into irregular bleeding yet, not getting into istihadah yet, just the heat part. When we talk about heat in fiqh, madhab al-Shafi'i, in the fiqh of madhab al-Shafi'i, it's stated there that the minimum for heat is 24 hours and the maximum is 15 days. Normally, it's just regularly, okay? So normally we're having it not past 15 days, it's between 6 or 7. If you ask me, what if it's 10? Never mind. As long as it's within the 15 days, that means you are healthy. That means you have no issue with irregular bleeding, no issue with istihadah. So again, I need you to not panic. One thing about at times I find that the more you learn, okay, some people, the more they learn, the more they get panic. But I don't want that to happen among all of you. I want you to be confident in this and do not get panic. If you have questions, just ask me later on. I will answer to your questions. So I will try my very best to explain to you what's the meaning of 24 hours and what's the meaning of 15 days. Okay, normally you just set aside the normally part lah. Okay, because the normally part it varies from one lady to another. Okay, all of us have different uh, uh, p- uh, different sets of menses lah. Okay, so we do not um, compare ourselves to others. Because why? Because our difference are all different, our bodies are all different. Okay, now let's see the example of duration of a minimum heat example. This is quite difficult. Okay, I will try my very best to explain for you, okay, step by step. Minimum 24 hours. In Arabic, they put that as yom wa layla, a day and a night, a day and one night. 24 hours. That means if you are asking me, I'm having spotting. I'm having spotting. And if I were to ask, okay, you're spotting within the 15 days period, how long is your spotting? It's only like during the Zuhur time, for example. During the Zuhur time, I'm having my spotting, and then Maghrib, I didn't see the spotting anymore. Spotting means like just a brief bleeding. We call it spotting lah, TTING, spotting. Just a very uh, the it's just like a stain. It's just a very brief stain. Now you have to check in order for us to rule it as istihada. Okay, you have to know the timing of it, because if it's istihada means although that you're having bleeding, a spotting bleeding, you still need to do your prayer, because that is not your mens, it's your irregular bleeding. That is your istihada. That is your istihada. So now, how do you know that it's mens? You have to see the timing of it. But the problem is, if you're having spotting, okay, if you're having like today spotting, tomorrow spotting, the next day spotting, it's not really like bleeding, menstrual bleeding. That will confuse you in terms of putting a ruling to it. You will get confused. I'm having spotting today. The next day I'm having another spotting, brief bleeding. Now I don't know, Ustazah. It's just like it comes only during Maghrib or it comes only during Zohor. Now I'm confused. Should I pray or should I not? That's always the question. When a lady is experiencing spotting, the question that they usually ask is, should I pray or should I not? Should I just not pray, and then I see whether tomorrow I'll be getting more bleeding. Okay. Now, if you see example one here, this is day one, day two. Okay, see example one. I put here 1, 2, 3, 4. The top part are the days. Okay, the top part here, these are the days, 1 until 15. Okay, because 15 is maximum. Now, for example, the first day, this only applies for those who are having spotting, not for those who are having normal menstrual bleeding. That is fine. You don't have any problem. You don't have any issue at all. But this only applies to those who are having spotting, a very small amount of bleeding, just a stain, a very tiny stain. Now, how do you actually say, how can I know whether it's 1 hour, 6 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours? It's very difficult for me to see. Definitely, yes. But this is where we use estimation. It's not like it must be 1 hour and 15 minutes and 45 seconds. It does not need to be very accurate. This is just an estimation. How do you estimate your spotting? Again, only applies to those who are experiencing spotting, not bleeding. If normal bleeding, just let it be. You don't have to check it every hour. Okay. So for example, I give you an example. You go into toilet, okay, at the Zohor time, okay, at Zohor time, and you see that I'm having I'm having a spotting during Zohor. So I just put there Zohor time is 1 o'clock. Zohor time is 1 o'clock. Now, 1 o'clock, you see that you're having spotting at your panty liner. You see a spotting at panty liner. So you consider that as at 1 o'clock, you're having spotting. And after that, you clean yourself up, you change, and then you assume that you're having your mens. You assume that you're having your mens. And then you do not do your Zohor prayer, because 1 o'clock, okay, there is Zohor time. You do not do your Zohor prayer. Now, and then after that, the next time you go into the toilet, okay, maybe you don't need to go toilet until Asar. So you want to check whether I need to pray Asar or not. So you go into the toilet at 4 p.m., for example. At 4 p.m., you go into the toilet and then you check your panty liner. Hey, there's still spotting. So just now, the first time when you check, it was at 1 p.m. The next time that you enter the toilet at 4, for example, at 4 p.m., and you see that you're still having spotting. That means from 1 until 4 p.m., from 1 until 4 p.m., you can count 2, 3, 4, 3 hours. So you're having 3 hours of spotting. And then you change your panty liner, and then you do not do your Asar prayer. The next time you enter, okay, the toilet at 5 p.m., for example. After 4, you enter the toilet at 5 p.m. You might want to write this down because I did not put it in my slides. At 5 p.m., you enter the toilet. You wanted to pee, and then you check your panty liner. There's no stain. There is no stain. At 5 p.m., there is no stain. Now, and then after that, you want to see whether you can pray your Maghrib or not. you go into the toilet at 7 p.m. and you check, hey, there's a stain. You check your panty liner, there's a stain. Now, at 5 p.m., you do not have the stain, but that's the last time you check. And at 7 p.m., you have stain. So 5 until 7, it's 2 hours. So that means the first one, it was 3 hours. The second one is 2 hours. It's very tedious, yes. But that's the reason why it only applies to those who are having spotting. Again, if you're having like bleeding, the normal kind of bleeding, men's bleeding, you don't have to check every now and then. You just need to clean yourself and that's it. And change your cortex and that's it. Your sanitary pad and that's it. You don't have to check. You don't have to calculate 1 hour, 2 hours. This only applies, okay, to those who are having spotting, because it gets more complex if you're having spotting. All right. Now, so that's one way of counting the hours. The other way, okay, the other way is for you to wait for the next prayer. Okay, that means you count it at the next prayer. So, for example, the second part is when, for example, you're having your spotting during Zohor, and then you just take it that, oh, today Zohor, I'm having my period, I'm having my spotting. Okay, again applies only to spotting, and then you wait until the next day of Zohor, whether you're still having a spotting or not. If the next day of Zohor, the Zohor time, during Zohor time, you find that you're still having your spotting, that means you're having your 24 hours of menstruation already. All right, that's another way. Okay, but this is more, you need more confidence in order to use this second type of estimation. So if you ask me, so now I'm confused, which one should I use? You can choose, okay, because again, when we talk about fiqh, we don't know whether we are right or wrong. We just learn and then we practice, we follow based on our situation. My situation is different from you. If you want to use the first style, use the first style. If you want to use the second style, you can use the second style based on your situation. I cannot tell you what to do. So you look at your situation, which is easier for you, then you follow. Now, that is how you count the hours, because most of the ladies, when I teach them 1 hour, 6 hours, 1 hour, 2 hours, this one I just put lah. Okay, how can we know? Is it that every hour, 1 hour, 11 o'clock I check, 12 o'clock I check, 1 p.m. I check? No, it's not like that. It's when you just do your activities, okay, as per normal. But whenever that you go to the toilet, whenever that you're changing, whenever that you want to do your business, then that's the time when you check. Okay, only applies for those who are having spotting. Again, who are having spotting, just a very brief stint, because usually those who are having spotting, they have the tendency to experience istihadah. But those who are having normal menstruation, never mind, you don't have to follow this. You just follow the example 2. That means continuous flow of menstrual. That means confirm that you're having your menstruation. The example 1 is for us to check whether you're having your istihadah or actually mens. Okay. So this part, all right. So this part, so far you just need to understand that. All right. Again, do not panic. If you find that this is, you can manage it like this. If you find that it's difficult, you can choose the other way. That means you wait for 24 hours. You wait for the next, if you see it during Zohor, wait for the next Zohor. If you see it during Asar, wait for the next Asar. Okay, now, most ladies, when they ask questions, I find that they do not have any problems with istihadah at all. They do not have any problem with irregular bleeding at all. But what they are experiencing is actually pausing of bleeding, pauses in bleeding. And then they get panicked because they thought that they are having istihadah. Because I'm having spotting, Ustazah, I think I'm having istihadah. Not necessarily. So you have to check again. This is where we are learning. You have to check, you have to understand that although that you're having spotting, not necessarily that you are having istihadah.
Although that your bleeding is pausing, not necessarily that you're having istihadah. So while you are learning, so that you will understand, so that you will be more confident, so that you do not get panic easily. Now, if there are pauses between the menstrual flow, okay, when do we do the obligatory bath? Usually the question is like this: I'm having spotting, and then today I'm having my spotting. Tomorrow there's nothing at all. The next day there's nothing. So that means there are 3 days of pauses. Now I'm confused. Am I having my mens or not? And should I just not pray, or should I just pray? Now it's confusing because you can never know when your bleeding is coming out, right? I mean, we cannot foresee. Like, oh, I know tomorrow confirm my bleeding comes out again. You cannot. It only happens, you can only tell once your bleeding stops or once your bleeding flows. Only then you can actually know whether you're having a bleeding or not. You cannot foresee it yet. I think tomorrow my bleeding will come again. Okay, you cannot foresee. You cannot be certain. But what you can do is that you can guess. One thing about this topic, I always tell the participants that we are learning, we are going through a guessing game. Okay, one thing about the topic on bleeding, okay, it's a guessing game. So you just have to guess with knowledge, guess with confidence. That's what we're doing. We are guessing with knowledge and with confidence. And you cannot guess as long as you have the knowledge. And after having that knowledge, you have to be certain, you have to be confident. Whether you're right or wrong, just leave it to Allah. And as long as you put in the effort to learn, okay, right or wrong, do not worry, because you're not accountable. If you already learn and then you put it into action with knowledge, you're not accountable. But if you do not learn and then you just make a guess without the knowledge, that one is when you're accountable for not learning. Okay. If there are pauses between menstrual flow, when do we do the obligatory bath? So this has always been the question among ladies. They come to me and they ask me questions, and I find that, oh, you do not have problems with istihadah. What you're having problems, issues, is that you're having pauses in between the menstrual flow. Okay, so I need you to, we're going to go for a quick break of 10 minutes for a toilet break. I need you to stare at the screen, and this page, I'm going to explain to you. These are real issues. This lady A, lady B, lady C, lady D, these are real issues. I got it from issues from ladies, okay? And these are the ladies who learned from me as well, okay? Not just random. I know who they are, and they have learned, they have joined in my class, and I got their diagrams, and then I put it in the slide so that everyone can learn from their experiences. Okay. So you have to see here A, B, C, D, the visuals here, the diagrams here. All of these ladies, they do not have any issue with istihadah. All of them are having menstrual bleeding, although their menstrual flow, uh, their menstrual flow was not um, consistent. Okay, it's not consistent because they have bleeding, and then after that they don't have bleeding. That's the reason why I put here no blood. I didn't say suci, I didn't say clean, because once you say that it's clean, that means the person is in a pure state. If I say no blood, that means the lady is still in a menstrual state, although that there is no bleeding. Again, if I say no blood, means the lady is still in a menstrual period, in a menstrual situation, although that there is no blood coming out from her. That means if during the month of Ramadan, although that there's no blood coming out from her, but she still cannot fast because she is in a state of menstruation. Okay, so there's a difference between clean and no blood. No blood means she's not in a state of pure, but she's in a state of hadath, only that no blood is coming out. We're going to learn this later. We're going to have a very short break of 10 minutes. Now it's 11. My time shows it's 11:20. So we're going to I'm going to uh, be back at 11:30. So you might want to drink some water, okay, and rest, maybe take your breakfast. I'm going to get back here at 11:30 a.m. Again, if you have questions, just put it aside first. Maybe I will address it later on with more explanation. I need you to see, I need you to stare at this page, that these ladies, they are not having issue with istihadah. But the question is, when are they? When do they need to do their obligatory bath? Bila nak mandi hadas besar? Kalau darah tersekat-sekat, when are they obligated to do the obligatory bath? If their bleeding has pauses. Wallahu a'lam bisawab. I see you at 11:30. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay, we're resuming, inshallah. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Allahumma salli ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala ali Sayyidina Muhammad. Okay. I hope that you have gone through this page, okay, on women who are not having any issue with istihadah at all. As we as the explanation, okay, goes further, deeper, okay, into the menstrual bleeding, into irregular bleeding, it'll get more difficult. If you cannot understand now, it's fine. Okay, you might want to revise it later. Uh, that's reason why we have decided to share the recording of today's session with everyone who's attending. Again, you can revise, and if you have questions, I'm going to open up for Q&A after this, but not now yet. I'm going to give you the link for Slido where you can ask your questions, and I will get my friends Ustazah Shaida and Ustazah Rauda to help me with the question and answer session. That's the best thing when you join us for today's session. Okay, I think there are some of you who are joining, who are not joining for today's session, but you will be listening to the recording of it. Again, if you have questions, although that you are not here at the moment, I will pass you the email that you can ask your questions later. So that means after this session, at least that you have learned, at least that you have attended the introductory session. If you have questions later on, not now, you can always ask through the given email. I'm going to pass you the email, inshallah, later on. Okay, so that means we have your back. But the important part is that you have to learn first lah. So that means if you're not here and you're just listening to the recording, you might want to finish up listening to the recording, and then you can email us the questions. So if you do not have questions today, you can ask us later. Because I have friends, they are very knowledgeable. We have Ustazah Shahida, we have Ustazah Rauda. They have gone through a lot of sessions with regards to the bleeding. They can answer your questions, inshallah. It won't be me answering your question, it will be my other friends, other Ustazah friends. But if it's too complex, then my friends will pass it to me, and then I will answer the question through that email. So do not ask me questions through my DM, because I do not take questions with regards to bleeding at DM or at PM or at messages, because it's very difficult for me to explain. Other questions apart from bleeding, I will see first, and then I will take the answer. I will take the question, inshallah. Now back to this page. Okay, I need you to bear in mind, I need you to take note. This is most important, that this page is for women who are not having issues with istihadah. No issue at all. And most of you, some of you, I don't know. Okay, I think most ladies who came to me, they have similar issues, and their issues are not on istihadah. Their issues are more on bleeding that are pausing, and that really worries them, and that really complicate matters. Okay, now we have lady A, we have lady B, we have lady C, and we have lady D. Now all of these ladies, they have something common, that is their menstrual flow is not consistent. Now lady A, she told me that she has spotting on the first day. So this spotting means it's a very brief bleeding. It's just a stain. Or at times the bleeding is just a dot. At times it's just like one string of bleeding. That is what considered as spotting. At times it's just a stain, it looks like a blackish stain. So I don't know what that is. Okay, so usually we call that as a spotting. And then this lady on the second day and the third day, okay, no spotting or no bleeding is visible, nothing at all. So there's no blood. I didn't say clean, I didn't say clear, but I just said there's no bleeding. No blood means no bleeding. And then she said that on the fourth day, okay, why did I say fourth day? Because the first day spotting, you have to count that as well. You cannot just put it aside, cannot just dismiss it, you have to count that as well. Although there is just one dot, Ustazah, yes, count that one dot as well. Now, the fourth day, she said that now I started having menstrual bleeding. I know it's normal because the flow, okay, is it's just like my menstrual flow, my previous menstrual flow, and the color is confirmed that it's menstruation. Okay, so 4, 5, 6, 7, and then she stops at 7. Of course, there is transition. Only that to make it easier for me to teach, I just put it red. Okay, actually the lady, she had transition in between. Transition means it does not like the color is not just red and then suddenly it stops. No, usually there's a transition from red to brown, and then from brown to just maybe very light brown, and after that it's yellow, and then it's gone, and then it's totally white. I mean, your panty liner or your cortex is totally white. Usually there's transition, but to make it easy for you to learn, I just put everything as red first, because I just want you to see this as menstrual bleeding. Okay, of course there's definitely transition. So this lady, although that her real bleeding, that means I see it red, it's not just stain, it's a really red bleeding, although that she saw it on the at the fourth day, but her bleeding is not actually from the fourth day. Her bleeding is actually her bleeding was actually from the first day, although that she said that it's just a tiny dot of bleeding. So the although it's just spotting, it's considered as bleeding. And the second and the third day, there's no bleeding at all. Okay, she cannot consider this as, oh, I'm having my mens, this one I'm not having my mens, and the third day also I'm not having my mens, and fourth day is my mens. You cannot say this is menstruation, first day menstruation, 2 and 3 is not menstruation, 4, 5, 6, 7 is menstruation. No, it everything from day 1 until day 7, this lady, she was in a menstrual state, in a menstrual state. Although that there's no bleeding coming out on the second and third day, but her hadath, her state is in hadath. Hadath means she cannot pray, she cannot fast during the month of Ramadan. If she choose to fast on the second and third day, her fasting is not valid. That means she's fasting in a state of hadath, in a state of mens. That means it's not valid. Okay, if she's fasting during Ramadan and she has to repay that 2 days, although that she has gotten 2 full days of fasting during Ramadan. Lady B, Lady B again. All these ladies, is based on a true stories, based on true stories. So these are true issues from the ladies, but they do not have any issues. All of them are only having issues. It's called menstrual bleeding, but it's not consistent. It has pauses in between. Now B, she said that she has spotting. This one, the issue is more difficult. Okay, spotting, and then no blood, and then she has spotting again on the fourth day, again just a spotting, just a stain. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Wow, she has a 5 days of pause. Okay, no bleeding comes out from her. So this lady, I remember, I can recall, she said that she's having this like almost every month. The pattern of her menstruation is always the same pattern every month. So that means during Ramadan, she has the same pattern as well. And that really worried her until she asked me. She went to my class, and then after class, she came up to me, and she said that, but I have 5 days of no bleeding at all, Ustazah. And now I don't know whether to fast or not if it's during Ramadan. So this is where I'm going to explain to you what do you need to do, whether you need to fast or you do not need to fast. So of course, she said that I fasted because it's 5 days. So I didn't fast on the 5 and 6. And then suddenly on the 7, there's no bleeding at all. I started to fast. And then 7, 8, 9, I fasted. And then on the 10th day, suddenly the blood is a lot. The bleeding is totally, it's confirmed that it's mens because it's a lot. Okay, usually the menstrual bleeding is a bleeding that is, it shows the characteristic of the menstruation. Later we're going to get there, inshallah. So she asked me, so the 7, 8, 9 that I fasted full 3 days. Should I repay it? Because this is fasting in Ramadan. And I told her, yes, you have to repay them, although that you have fasted for 3 full days, because you are fasting in a state of health. You are fasting in a state of menstruation. Before that, you have spotting, and this is considered as your bleeding as well, although that is only spotting. And then if you counted from the first time that you have had your spotting until the last day of your bleeding, it's only 13 days. It's within a period of 15 days. It does not exceed 15 days. So your bleeding is not 10, 11, 12, 13. Your bleeding is actually, your bleeding actually started from the first day when you saw your spotting. The question is, okay, how should I know when, okay, should I do my obligatory bath for me to pray, for me to fast if it's during Ramadan? That is the question. Now you look at, see the same problem, okay, again, the pause is the pause, the no bleeding, the pause is sandwich between spotting and menstruation. For this one, is sandwich, the D sandwich between the menstruation, okay, the, what do you call that, the strong bleeding, and also the spotting bleeding. All right, again, there's no blood here, no bleeding. She thought that she can only pray fast in Ramadan, and she did that, but suddenly spotting came out. Okay, after the no bleeding, there's spotting. So now she's confused. What should I do? Is this istihada? I said it's not istihada. How do you know it's not istihada? Now, I need to tell you a very important statement. Okay, when it comes to no issue in istihada. Now, any bleeding that you discharge within a period of 15 days, it does not exceed 15 days, within a period of 15 days, any bleeding that you discharge within a period of 15 days, although that it is a weak blood, although that it's just spotting, stain, 1 dot of blood, okay, it's considered as menstrual bleeding. All right, as long as it's within 15 days. So you have to understand. Why do you need to understand this? Later on, when we get to istihada, I will briefly introduce you to istihada. Istihada is when your bleeding exceeds 15 days. What should you do? How do you give rulings to it? It's going to be a whole new set of rulings. Now, for menstruation, it's easy. As long as it's within a period of 15 days, regardless of the quantity of the bleeding, okay, whether it's um, a strong bleeding, or it's a lot of bleeding, or it's just a tiny stain, the whole thing is considered as menstruation. Again, the key word here is within 15 days. So 15 days is like a very important number. 15 is a very important number for you to put a ruling into bleeding. Okay, so you look at these ladies, all of them, they are having menstruation. Only that they are pauses. What worries them, what makes them confused, is because the pauses at times, it can be more than 3 days, 6 days. This lady, okay, the C and D, they are having like 6 days of pause. Now, the question that they usually ask, and you might be asking yourself as well, if there are pauses between the menstrual flow, when do we do the obligatory bath? That is the question. When do we do the obligatory bath? Now, ladies, there are two opinions. One is the opinion of Imam Al-Rafi'i radiallahu anh, and the other one is the opinion of Imam An-Nawawi rahimahumullah. Okay, so both of them, they are scholars. They've written books on fiqh. They are not just any scholar. They are scholars who we derive rulings from, who we read their writings. Okay, now our contemporary scholars, we can only put in rulings, you can only decide on a ruling if we learn from the past scholars as well. Now, Imam Al-Rafi'i and Imam Nawawi, both of them are scholars from the Madhab Al-Shafi'i. Both of them, Al-Rafi'i and Al-Nawawi, rahimahumullah, both of them are scholars who base their fiqh on the school of thoughts of Imam Al-Shafi'i. And how incredible it is, they are scholars, they are very knowledgeable, yet both of them have different opinions. Amazing. And we cannot dismiss. That's the reason why if you learn fiqh from a lot of asatiza, from a lot of ustazah, okay, you might find that this has a different opinion, this ustazah has a different opinion, and we cannot just simply say that they are sesat, you have to dismiss. No, it's not as simple as that, because most likely they are following other opinions. What you need to do is that you need to learn, okay, from a credible, from a credible source. That is most important. And one thing in Singapore, I mean, in other parts of the country, it's very difficult for us to actually know which is credible, which is the credible source, which is not. That's the reason why there are so many types of understanding. Okay, and at times it's at times the understanding makes no sense at all. So one thing about Singapore, we have what we call it as ARS certified asatiza teachers. So if you learn, you might want to check your sources first, because sources, one thing in Islamic sciences, in Islamic studies, sources is important. So if you learn from a teacher, if the teacher cannot give you the source, you have to question that teacher. Okay, and it's not but it's not beradab. No, that is called the adab of seeking knowledge. But you have to ask nicely lah. It's not like as if that you're undermining or you're testing. No, you ask nicely, or you maybe do your own research. If you find that there is something wrong with the understanding of certain matters, I've learned solat like this. Suddenly the person said solat must bring in I have to bring in a knife when I do my salat, for example. This is just an example. You have to question, where did you get your source from? That's the reason why the first thing that I did just now was to give you the source, so that when people ask you, hey, you learn all this from where? There is a source. Okay, once a teacher if a teacher has no source, that is quite dangerous. It's not quite, it's very dangerous actually, because whatever it is, we are learning from sources, and we call it the sanad. Okay, we have the sources, we have the sanad, and it's straight to the scholars, it's straight to Prophet Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Now, Imam Rafi and Imam Nawawi, they have different opinions. So if you ask me, why do scholars have different opinions? That is another topic. Okay, I'm not going to elaborate it here, because I understand that most of you might be wondering, why are they the same mazhab but they have different opinions? All right, that is a totally whole topic, because these people, these scholars, they are not just awam like us. We are awam. Awam means we are the members of the public. We do not have a vast knowledge to actually put in ruling. We do not have that. That's the reason why we follow the scholars. We cannot just put our own ruling. We have to follow the scholars, because we do not have our knowledge is very limited. We do not have that vast knowledge. But these ulama, these scholars, they have the knowledge, they have the information, they have the capacity to actually put in their own ruling, and they will not be accountable if it's wrong. Okay, if it's wrong, they even get a reward, although that they are wrong, because they are already at that level, not us. If we do something that is wrong, and then based on our instinct, based on a very uh, 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 unclear sources, we are accountable for it. So that means do not act as if that you can give out ruling unless you really know about that ruling. So if not, you just follow the ruling given to you by the scholars. Just follow. If you have learned everything, then you can put on your ruling. That's the case for Imam Rafi and Imam An-Nawawi. They have that capacity to put in a ruling. And of course, one of them, okay, the scholars, one of them must be wrong, but they are not accountable for it, because what they are doing is what we considered as ijtihad. Ijtihad means you put in the effort, and the rules and regulations, we call it the syarat, the prerequisite in order for them to put in the ruling, that is a lot. Okay, so we are not at that level yet. We are not at that level yet. So we just learn and then we follow. Now, Imam Rafi and Imam Nawawi, both of them are giving out, okay, giving out opinions based on Madhab Shafi'i. But both of them have a different opinion. For Imam Rafi'i, he said that if you're having issues, posing issues, what you can do is that you can wait. That's what Imam Rafi'i said. You can wait. For example, I give you the example of C. Okay, look at Lady C. This Lady C, she said that she's having spotting for 3 days. And then on the 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, she didn't know that she's gonna there will be no bleeding for the next 6 days. She won't know because it's a guessing game. Once she said the fourth day, she won't know that the next day she's gonna have no bleeding. The next days until the next 5 days, she won't be having bleeding. She won't know. Again, this topic is about guessing game, but you have to be confident. Now, how confident are we? That's the reason why we learn the opinions from the scholar. Now, Imam Rafi said like this. Example, if this lady C is me, I am having my spotting 1 to 3 days. The fourth day, no bleeding. Now I will start to worry. No bleeding now. Is it my bleeding stop already? Should I do my obligatory bath and do my prayer? Or if it's Ramadan, should I fast? I will have these questions inside my head now. I have the knowledge already. I know that Imam Rafi said that I can wait. That's what Imam Rafi said. So I follow Imam Rafi. I think I'm going to wait for a few days, for a few more days. I'm going to wait for a few more days because I know that usually if I'm having before this, okay, in the past, my bleeding is always 10 days. Suddenly now it's 3 days only. Impossible. I don't think it's just 3 days. I think my bleeding will be more than 3 days because last time when I had my bleeding, it's usually 8, 9, 10 days. So I will follow the opinion of Imam Rafi. I will wait. So I will wait. I will wait for day 4, day 5, day 6, day 7, day 8, day 9 until day 10 because usually from past experience, my mens is around 10 days. I will wait until 10 days. And that is fine. That means I won't solat. I won't solat on the fourth day because no bleeding. Not because of I have no bleeding and I don't solat also. Usually if we don't have bleeding, we solat, right? But I will follow the opinion of Imam Rafi'i. I will not salat, I will not fast in Ramadan. I can wait. I wait until the 10th day. True enough, my bleeding, okay, it comes out again. So that means I am safe. My guess is correct. So once I have the bleeding on the 10th day, that means I'm having my mens. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15. Now, it stops at 15. Of course, there will be transition here, transition in colors. Does not need to be red all the time. Okay, but as long as it's bleeding, okay, you consider this as menstruation. Now, if I stop at the day 15, I am safe. That means the whole menstruation from the spotting until the red, the no bleeding part, everything is considered as I am in the state of hadath, major hadath. I am in the state of major hadath. I am in a state of menstruation. That means when I did not pray, when I did not fast in Ramadan, it's correct. What I did was correct. Because when you are in a state of menstruation, you cannot pray and you cannot fast during Ramadan. Now, so I follow the Imam Rafi's opinion, so I will wait. The question is, I bet that most of you will question this. What if the bleeding didn't come out, right? I didn't fast, I didn't pray, and then the bleeding didn't come out until the 15 days. That means your guess is wrong. So the days, and then this one, just imagine the 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, it's clean also. It's clean, no blood as well. That means at the 10th day, you see that, oh no, there's no blood. Okay, that means your guess is wrong. So your fast, your Ramadan, your prayer, you have to qada everything. You have to qada everything that you have left, okay, that you did not do. Okay, this only applies if your bleeding does not come out anymore. But if there's bleeding coming out, that means you're safe. That means you do not need to qada, you do not need to repay anything here, because you are in a state of menstruation, because it's sandwiched, the no bleeding is sandwiched between two bleeding. Now, if you still need time to digest, I would like you to, maybe after this, you listen back to the recording and try to digest slowly, because it takes time for us to actually digest this type of explanation. So just now the question is, what if the blood really stopped? There's no bleeding. 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, there's no bleeding at all. Okay, so that means you are in a state of pure. You're pure actually. Okay. Now, if somehow you're having your bleeding and it exceeds 15 days, I stop at 16 days, Ustazah, not 15 days, I stop at 16 days, it means that you are having issue with istihadah. You cannot consider yourself, okay, as having menstruation for 16 days. No. Okay, that means this part is istihadah and this part is haid. If you cannot understand now, it's fine, because I've not explained to you about istihadah yet. Now, for this page, just take it that these ladies, they did not exceed 15 days. These ladies, they did not exceed 15 days. So anything that's within the period of 15 days, it's considered as menstruation. It's considered as menstrual bleeding. We've already gone through the Imam Nawawi's opinion. Let's go through Imam Rafi's opinion. We are going through Imam Nawawi's opinion. Now, Imam Nawawi, he has a different opinion. Look at Lady C again. If Imam Rafi, he said that you can wait, okay? But Imam Nawawi, he said that every time that you are clean, just do your obligatory bath and then do your salat. This is more, we call it more, it's more like a safety measures lah. We call it ihtiyatan or berhati-hati. Imam Nawawi, okay, his approach is more safe. His approach is more hati-hati, because he said that every time you're clean, just do your obligatory bath, mandi hadas besar, just do your obligatory bath, and then you solat, you fast during Ramadan if there's no bleeding. But if the bleeding comes out again, whatever that you are doing, your prayer, your fasting, it means that you're doing it in a menstruation state and it's invalid. But are you sinful because you're doing it in a menstruation state? You are not sinful, because you do not know anything that we do not have any knowledge of. We do not have any information, because we cannot foresee, right, whether we're going to have bleeding again or not. That is not accountable. That means we are not sinful at all, so not to worry. Now, that is Imam Nawawi's opinion. That means if you ask me, Ustazah, now I've been having my bleeding for 3 days, and the 4th day I do not have my bleeding. Now, should I mandi or not? So you can choose. You can choose to follow Imam Rafi, you can wait. Or you can choose Imam Nawawi, you just mandi and you just salat. But later on you have to see whether you're still in that state or not. Later, then you can actually see. So whatever it is, you have to go through it first, and then you check again. You check again whether you have to qada, you have to repay or not. Okay, so that's the thing about this topic. It's a guessing game, and you cannot foresee, and you have to wait until the bleeding stops. Then you can actually check again whether you have to qada, you have to repay or not. So usually it's about whether you need to qada or not. That's about it. Now, so if you ask me, Ustazah, what if I follow Rafi'i for this month, and then next month I find that if I follow Nawawi it's easier, if I follow Rafi'i it's easier. You can actually follow either or. It's fine based on your situation. Like I mentioned, okay, everyone has, all of us have different situations, and we cannot just judge a person, okay, and then you say that no, you have to follow Nawawi, it's safer, but we don't know her condition. Maybe it's more difficult for her to follow the opinion, so she's following the opinion of Rafi, and it's fine. What if I follow Rafi this month, next month I follow Nawawi? It's fine as well, because you're following the opinion based on your current situation. And please do not judge other people's situation, because their situation is different from yours. You want to, this is just for you, okay? You're not imposing it on other people. If other people, you can just tell them, oh, you can follow Rafi'i, you can follow Nawawi. It's their choice. For yourself, okay, you can choose on your own whether you want to follow the Rafi'i or a Nawawi. Okay, so now if because I've received DM asking me, so I'm having spotting now, I'm clean. Should I bathe or should I not? Should I pray or should I not? That's when you need to understand these two opinions. That's the reason why I did not answer to DM, because I would say that if you follow Rafi'i, you can actually wait. If you follow Nawawi, you can bathe anytime. And then if the person does not follow any lesson, the person would ask again, what do you mean by follow Rafi? What do you mean by follow Nawawi? Why are there two opinions? So it will be forever, like the thread will be very long. So I don't have the time. I have so many commitments and all that. So I cannot take questions like this through DM without you learning. But if you have had your lesson and you have questions later on, then I will take your questions. Why? Because you already have the knowledge. And if I were to say that, you can follow just Nawawi, I can only answer you that, oh, you can follow this one, you can follow Rafi'i. And you really have the idea what I mean. Okay, but without learning, you won't have any idea. If I were to tell you, oh, follow Rafi'i. What do you mean by follow Rafi'i? Now you are learning it. You have learned it. If you want to ask me any question after this, ahlan wa sahlan. Thank you so much for learning. Thank you so much for taking the time. Okay, I mean, 4 hours just to learn about this complex issue is not easy, but that's what you're doing, and definitely you will be rewarded. And may Allah open up our hearts. May Allah make it easy for us to understand. Make it easy for us to understand whatever situations that we are in, and put confidence in us so that we do not have was. Most importantly, we have learned, and the rest leave it to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, if this scenario happens during fasting of Ramadan, okay, so this one usually it'll be very complicated, because it's during the fasting of Ramadan. So I have ladies coming up to me and said that, Ustazah, I have spotting and I didn't salat, and then I didn't salat for 4 days because I saw that I've been having bleeding, but it's only just a slight bleeding, a spotting, just one spot, just a stain, just a very brief stain. Okay, so and then on the 5th day I find that I'm not having my bleeding, and then I started to make to do my fasting, because this is during Ramadan. This lady came to me to ask about during Ramadan. 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, okay, 5 days I fast during Ramadan. Of course I pray as well, but suddenly on the 10th day, there's bleeding. So of course I stopped from fasting, I stopped from praying until the 13th day. Now, Ustazah, the 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 that I have been fasting, is it valid? The answer is not valid, because it's sandwiched between 2 bleeding, okay, and it's within the period of 15 days. That means the whole thing from the spotting until the 13 days, okay, the whole thing is considered as of menstruation. Your 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, although that you did not bleed, there's no bleeding coming out from you, but still you're considered in a state of hadath. You are in a state of hadath. So whatever prayer that you're doing, whatever fasting that you're doing in Ramadan is considered as invalid. I've already fasted 5 days, Ustazah. That means I have to qada, repeat all 5 days. Yes, because you fasted during your menstruation period. That means it's not valid. And then the lady asked me, Ustazah, cannot have discount. This is legit, eh? And I laughed at her question. I mean, she's so cute lah. I mean, I know that she genuinely wanted to know whether she can just consider as valid, because to repay means she's doing 10 days of fasting. So that means she already fasted 5 days, but it's not valid, and then she has to repay 5 days, so it becomes 10 days of fasting. So I told her that you will be rewarded. Definitely you will be rewarded, because you don't know that you're actually having your menstruation. But when it comes to the fiqh part, the reward part, that is between you and Allah is the most kind, and you really do it because of Allah, you will definitely be rewarded by Allah. But the fiqh part of it, whether it's valid or not, I have to tell you that there's no discount. It's considered as invalid. Okay, I'm sorry I do not have any other answer for you except that it is invalid. So now you know that you have to repay the 5 days. Okay. So you can read this on your own. This lady's menstrual bleeding is 13 days. If the lady fasted from day 5 until day 9, this one, the no blood, day 5 until day 9, because she assumed that her bleeding has stopped, her fast for those 5 days, day 5 until day 9, were invalid and need to be paid back. Okay, must repay. Qada, must repay, because she was fasting in the state of major impurity. This is because her bleeding has not stopped and continued at day 10. It's not, there's another set of bleeding in this part. Also, her total bleeding is less than 15 days. As long as it's less than 15 days. Okay, so this lady is not having istihadah, just that she has pauses in between her menstrual bleeding. Now, the difference between menstrual heat and irregular istihadah bleeding. This is very this takes time for you to understand, to digest. Okay, if you find that I cannot understand what Ustazah is trying to say, okay, I hope that you can rewind again and look at the recording, listen to the recording, and try to slowly digest it. Okay, it takes a while. Or when I was learning this topic, yeah, it took me about 1 year to finish up the whole book. And I've been sitting in front of a teacher to learn this. That means directly learning this. And for me to really understand, to digest it, it takes a while as well. And at that time I was a student, so I have so much time. So my commitment was only studying. So what I did was I keep on writing, I keep on asking questions to my Ustazah, and I keep on doing visuals and all that. So at that time I focused solely on studying, so I have the time to do that. And it took a while for me to actually understand it, and to see the whole picture of it. So if you do not understand my explanation, please do not feel frustrated about it, okay? Because it's hard. So that's why we just need to listen back to the recording and try to digest it. And if you find that I still cannot understand, okay, just hope that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala does not test us with istihadah. Okay, I'm telling you now that istihadah is a test. If you are going through istihadah, that means Allah is giving you the test, and it's not an easy test. Istihadah is a very difficult test. And if Allah gives you istihadah, it shows that you are being blessed. Actually, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is giving you the opportunity to seek knowledge on istihadah. And when you seek knowledge, subhanallah, you are nearing the paradise. That's what actually get us to paradise easily, is to keep on learning. Okay, if you look at the hadith from Rasulullah SAW, and Prophet Muhammad SAW said that if you seek knowledge, it's as though that you're on the path towards Jannah. That means the more that you seek knowledge, okay, the more that you seek knowledge, the more that you are nearing paradise. And if you say that, oh, that means I do not have to do other acts of worship. No, we can never know. We can never know what brings us to paradise. And we know ourselves. At times, We pray, but we know that our prayer is not khushu, our prayer is not khushu. We know that at times we tend to leave certain obligatory. We know that we have so many mistakes, we have so many wrongdoings. And how do we cover all this? Is by doing good deeds every single moment. So that means if you have the opportunity to learn, that means you are giving yourself an opportunity to go towards Allah, to go towards paradise. And we can never know what actually lead us to paradise. So that's the reason why one of the best ways, the scholars, our teachers, they keep on telling us, what actually make it easy for you to be, to for Allah to actually reward you with paradise is number one, khidmah. Number two is continue seeking knowledge. That's why we have to be consistent. How busy we are, we have to have that time, we have to put in some time to actually learn something. Okay, you have to, regardless of it being online, or you can go to classes. Now it's very difficult for you to go classes online. Even you can actually listen to YouTube. Now it's easier for you to learn actually, but as long as you have a reference point, okay, like you have an ustaz or ustazah as reference point of reference, you can actually learn from YouTube. And if you have questions, you can ask your point of reference. Okay, so now we keep on learning. And if you're having istihadah, it's not for you to just, now I have istihadah, I just ask ustazah, and then you want the answers now, now just based on your issue. No, you have to learn. That's the reason why when people come up to me and say that I'm having istihadah, I will ask them, number one, have you learned about istihadah? No, sir, no, ustazah, I just want you to tell me which one is istihadah, which one is hid. I will not answer that question, because you're going to misunderstand whatever that I'm trying to explain. That's the reason why classes are important. Sessions are important for you to understand first. Then, after having knowledge, that knowledge can navigate your questions, and so that you won't ask questions that is not necessary lah. Because there are questions that are necessary. There are questions that is not necessary. I'm not saying like there are no stupid questions. All questions are good questions, but some questions are unnecessary. It's just that some people, they just don't want to learn, and they just want to have the answer now. Okay, when actually you have to go through the process of learning. Okay, so if you're having istihadah, I'm sorry to tell you that it's actually a test for you, but again, it's a glad tiding for you as well. It makes you want to learn more and learn and learn, and that will help you to enter Jannah, to enter paradise, because you can never know what actually brings us to Jannah. So we just, number one, said the scholar, khidmah. What is khidmah? Khidmah means give service to others. Okay, give service to others. That makes us, because Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala said, Prophet Muhammad SAW said that a person who helps another person, okay, Allah will help that person, not only in this world, but also in the hereafter. So if if we want Allah to help us, if we have problems, if we have like, I have so many issues, help other people, and Allah will give you solutions. Amin ya Rabbil Alameen. Because I'm not telling you this, it's not from me. It's from Prophet Muhammad SAW. There are so many hadiths that we can learn from, where Prophet Muhammad SAW had told us how are we going to solve our issues. Okay, so that's one of the ways that we can easily enter paradise. And one is khidmah, give service to others. That means you have to be helpful. You have to give service. Like if people ask you for help, you don't take it as a troublesome, this person always ask for. No, it's actually Allah is actually putting you in that situation to see how you respond to that. You have the opportunity to help a person, so how do you respond to that? But again, look at your situation. You do not force yourself, because one thing about helping others, you have to see your priorities as well. At times there's so much that we want to do, there's so much that we want to help other people, but we neglect our commitment. For example, I'm a mother. Okay, I have children, so my priority definitely will be my family, my husband, my children. And somehow I have students as well, seeking solutions from me. For example, I can help them within my power. Okay, if I but what not But of course, I have other commitments, I have other priorities, and my priorities definitely will be my children and my family. And then after that, if I can help, I will help. So again, number one is service to others. Number two is learning. So that's exactly what you're doing. So you have lots and lots and lots of rewards from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Now, hid and istihada, before I go for, we're going to go for another 10 minutes break, okay? I just need to go through the reason, the duration, and the ruling. Now, when we talk about istihada, what is the reason of istihada? Istihada is a bleeding, where um, it's seen as an indication. So istihada is like an indicator to tell you that there is something going on inside your body. Menstruation is natural. Menstruation is to indicate that your body is healthy. That's the reason why if you're having a menstruation, it shows that your body is healthy. But if if you're having irregular bleeding, for example, Ustazah, I've been having my bleeding spotting for 30 days, for 2 months. That is an indication your body is trying to tell you that there is something inside you that you need to address. So the first thing that I would like to recommend to those who are having istihada, irregular bleeding, that means the bleeding is persistent, is very prolonged, or you keep on having spotting, okay, like a lot of spotting, like you don't know where it comes from. The first recommendation that I would like to give all ladies who are experiencing this issue, okay, is to seek consultation from doctors. Go to see doctor. Number one, go and see doctor, because that is actually an indication that there is something wrong, but not necessarily that you are sick, Noah, because at times istihada can happen not only because of your physical, you have medical issues, or physical problems or medical issues, but at times it can happen because you are too stressed, you are too tense up. That can happen as well. Not only medical problems, but also mental issues that you're having can cause istihada as well. So if you find that I've already went to the doctor and doctor said my uterus is fine, they don't find any problems, but you're having bleeding, and it really, what do you call that, trouble you, and it's really troublesome because it's very difficult for you to do your prayer with all that bleeding, you might want to go to doctor and ask for medication, and doctors can help you with that. Because once the doctor, if they know that you're having persistent bleeding, they will definitely want to check further, do more investigation on you. And usually those who are having physical or medical issue with having istihada, and the reason is because of medical issue, usually because their uterus, they have cysts, they have fibroids, they have the problems with and the uh, uh, worrying part is cancer. Okay, I have people who are having cancer, they will tend to have istihada as well. But I'm not going to frighten you. It does not necessarily mean that you have medical issue. There are ladies who went to the doctors and then the doctor said you don't have any problem. But why am I having bleeding? That might be because you have mental issues. For example, you are too stressed up, you are depressed. Okay, that can cause istihada as well. So if you don't have any medical problems, you might want to address the issues, your mental issues. That means you might want to go to therapies, or you might want to relax yourself, go for a staycation, go for a spa, just so that you can relax yourself. And once you're relaxed, your hormone will change as well. Okay, because everything it has got to do with your hormones. All right. So the first thing, so these are the reasons. The reasons are either medical or it can be mental as well. So you have to address the issue. Okay, my explanation here is on the fiqh part of it. So I cannot tell you what's the problem. The only person that can tell you what's the problem are doctors or therapists, okay? What I can tell you as an ustazah, because my capacity here is as an ustazah, is that I can tell you when you can do your prayer or when you cannot. How to differentiate between the head and istihadah. My capacity is on the fiqh part of it. The fiqh part of it. So if you ask me further than that, so why I'm having this, I'm stressed and all that, you want to talk to me about your problems and all that, sorry, I cannot help because I am not a counselor. So I cannot help you to navigate through your emotions and all that. What I can help you with is the fiqh part of it. When to do your prayer, when is it you do not need to do a prayer, or how do you differentiate between this is actually hate, this is actually istihadah. So we're going to go to the next one. I just need you to stare at this part, okay, this page. We're going to go for another 5 minutes break, and then after that we're going to continue with the difference. But I'm just, for the istihadah, I'm not going to go deeper, okay, because I'm afraid that you're going to get more confused. So I will just give you an introduction of how to differentiate between the head and istihadah. And then after, I'm going to go straight to question and answer. Now, I will pass to you at the chat, please see your chat box, the Slido for you to put up your questions. Okay, see your chat box. That's the Slido for you to put up your question. We're going to have a 10 minutes break. If you have questions, put your questions at Slido. Do not put at the chat box because I'm afraid that we're going to miss it out, okay? Just put it at Slido. Unless you find that you have problems with your Slido, then you put at the chat box. I have with me Ustazah Shahidah and Ustazah Raudah. They will assist me in collating the questions. Please put it at Slido so we do not miss it out. But if you find that you're having difficulties with Slido, you can put it at the chat box, but do not do it privately because I'm not reading it. So put it for everyone to see. If you want to remain anonymous, go to Slido. If you don't mind people see your name giving that question, you have to pass it to everybody. So do not just pass to me because I won't be reading it. My friends will be reading it and then I will answer it later. Okay, I'm going to go through the istihadah first, and then after that, I'm going to go through the question and answer, inshallah. So 10 minutes now, my time shows here is 12:25. I'm going to see you at 12:35, inshallah. So you can write your questions now, and Ustazah Shahidah and Ustazah Raudah will help me in collating, and after that, I will answer verbally, inshallah. But if you find that, I think we don't take questions verbally. You might want to just write it down. And later, if I don't understand the questions, I will ask you verbally. You might want to explain to me verbally as well. Wallahu alam bisawab. Thank you so much. We're going to go through just a few more pages. And after that, it's question and answer time. Thank you so much. Assalamualaikum. 12:35. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Okay. Again, I would like to repeat whatever that I've said just now, okay? As long as you are having bleeding, regardless of the characteristic of the bleeding, it's weak, it's brown color, it's red color, it's just a dot, a spotting, a dot, okay? Whatever color it is, it's heavy bleeding, it's weak bleeding, as long as it's within the period of 15 days, everything is considered as menstrual bleeding, menses. So if you were to ask me, Ustazah, I'm having like a brownish type of stain. What is that? That is mens if it's within the 15 days period. It does not exceed. But once it exceeds 15 days, 16 days, I'm still having my spotting. Or I stop at 16, 17, 18, but 19, on the 19th day, I had my spotting. Then that is when you have an issue. You have an istihadah issue. That's when you're having istihadah issue, and the ruling is different. And when you talk about ruling, there are more than 10 rulings. There are 14 rulings. But what I'm going to teach you, okay, is only one ruling. One ruling out of 14 rulings when it comes to bleeding. And later on, if you join the istihadah, just focuses on the istihadah part, okay, so that those who are not having istihadah won't get confused, I will teach you another one ruling, means two rulings altogether. Now, that's the reason why I need to I need those ladies who are having problems with regular bleeding to continue learning the istihadah part, because for today I cannot. It requires, at least I try to make it like compact everything, but it's impossible. It's impossible. So I need to make another 4 hour session to just talk about istihadah itself. But what I can tell you now, for those who are joining this session, this is an introductory. One thing about istihadah, putting a ruling means hukum, putting a ruling to a bleeding is not as simple as head is within 15 days and any bleeding that comes on the 16th day onwards is considered as istihadah. So if you have the notion that bleeding is within the 15 days period, after that 16, 17, 18, if you are still having your bleeding, you just take it as istihadah. That is not correct. If you look at the books from the scholars, all of them, when they talk, when they write about the bleeding, they will have questions. They will put in what are the colors, what are the characteristics of your bleeding, in order for you to understand, in order for you to put in ruling, which one is hate and which one is istihadah. Again, the colors of bleeding, the characteristic of bleeding only applies to those who are having issues with istihadah. To those who do not have issues with istihadah, everything is within the 15 days period. That means you do not have to see the characteristic or the color of the bleeding. Now, we are at istihadah. So you have to, just now we learn about ladies who have no issue with istihadah. Everything is about head. Now we are learning about istihadah. So you have to understand that you're looking at ladies who are having istihadah. Having a continuous bleeding or persistent bleeding, call it prolonged bleeding. I'm having my menstruation, it's already 15 days. And then after that, I still have spotting afterwards until 20 or 30 days. That means you're having istihadah. You're having istihadah. Confirm you're having istihadah. So you have to learn further. Because if not, it's very difficult for you to know when you need to pray. And I have cases where the lady came out to me and said that, Ustazah, I've been having bleeding. Like it's just spotting for the past 3 months. And then my husband, when he asked me, are you having your mens? And I keep on telling him that, yeah, I'm still having bleeding. And then my husband, he was frustrated. He said that, why is your bleeding keep on going, and why is it so persistent? And when are you not having a bleeding? So you cannot say that all your bleeding is mens, because mens doesn't work that way. Mens is only within the period of 15 days. The rest, if it comes out more than that within your cycle, within your cycle, some people, they have 28-day cycle, that is normal, 27, 28, 29, some 32 days of cycle. Okay, we're looking at cycle. And for fiqh, the minimum cycle for a woman, cycle of clean cycle. Clean cycle means your blood is, you are clean from bleeding. That means you're clear from bleeding. The minimum in the fiqh is 15 days. That means for you to consider your next bleeding as the head, you have to be clean of bleeding for at least 15 days. So that is the minimum cycle. Okay, we don't take it by month. It's not like January and then February and then March. We don't look at it that way, but we look at the clean cycle. Okay, later on we're going to get there. Again, if you want to know further on the cycle and the istihadah and the continuity until this is cycle and then mens and then istihadah again and then the clean cycle again, that one you need to learn further. But for today's session, I just need to tell you that it's not as simple as after 15 days, you consider it as head, 16 days and above, you're still having spotting, it's considered as istihadah. It's not as simple as that. Why? This is the reason why. Look at issue from Lady A and issue from Lady B. This is my explanation to why it's not as simple as head. And this is my explanation to why scholars have been writing down in books, have been explaining to us that it's not as simple as calculating istihadah is not as simple as what we have been learning so far. That's reason why if you ask us, Asatiza, about your istihadah, and then you just said, there's spotting, and then there's blood, and then there's spotting again. Which one is istihadah? Which one is head? We cannot answer because we need you to be explicit as possible. That means you have to be clear as possible. We will ask you questions like, what color is it? And if you ask us, does that matter? It matters a lot because that's how you got your hukum. That's how you got your ruling. Again, only applies to istihadah, only applies to those who are having istihadah. Now, if you look at here, issue from Lady E and issue from Lady B. This Lady A and Lady B, they are having the same style of bleeding. Why do I say that? Look, Lady A and Lady B, they are bleeding. Don't look at the colors first. Just look at the duration. The duration is 7 days, they're having bleeding. Lady B, 7 days, she's having bleeding as well. And then they are clear from bleeding. I'm not saying they are clear from head. I just said that they are clear from bleeding for 5 days. A, B, same, clear. Do not look at the color first. And then Lady A, she started her bleeding at the 13th day until 20. Lady B, also the same, 13 until 20. Okay, now, if we were to follow, let me take the how to color point option, pen. Okay, now, so this is the 15 days, 15 days. Okay, now, if we were to use the ruling that we've been learning, okay, maybe we have heard that after 15 days, then we consider as head, right? We consider as istihadah. So if you were to take that as the ruling, this lady, okay, her head is until 15, and then her istihadah is 16, 17, 18, 19, 20. That means she will pray, she will fast during Ramadan. And this lady, okay, she will also pray at 16, 17, 18, 19, 20 because cannot exceed 15 days, right? So she will take that 16, 17, 18, 19. All of these are istihadah. But if you see here, menstruation, it has to be strong blood. And you see here, this is a strong blood. You cannot pray with a strong blood. You cannot pray with a menstruation blood. So this lady, she's having her istihadah here. And this lady, she's been having her istihadah here. And this is the head of the lady. So if we were to take, okay, how to clear this? Okay. So if we were to use this one, 15 days, and then any bleeding that comes on the 16th day onwards is considered as istihadah. If we were to say that this is istihadah, how can the istihadah for Lady A be more stronger? The bleeding is more stronger than the head because the ruling for head is menstruation must be stronger. The bleeding must be stronger than istihadah. So if the lady takes that this is her head and this is her istihadah, that is very wrong because the head must be stronger than the istihadah. And that's the problem. If we were to rule out istihadah as something that comes after 16 days, no. And then the question is, how do we rule it? This is how. For istihadah, again, only applies for istihadah. For istihadah, this is the same Lady A, Lady B. Okay, this is the what do you call that? The ruling. For Lady A, although that they have, as though that they are having the same issue. Okay, because the same 7 days of bleeding, the same 5 days of pausing, and the same bleeding that they 15 days, as though that they have similar problems, issue, but their ruling is different. For Lady A, her istihadah is here. Her head is this one. For Lady B, her head is this and her istihada is this. When we talk about istihada means you can salat. Istihada means you can fast during Ramadan. Istihada means you can do sexual intercourse. Okay, so that is istihada, the difference between istihada and haid. Istihada is as though that you're clean, you're not in hadath, but you are just having your bleeding. That's all. Okay, that means you're having your najis every now and then because of the bleeding. And to give ruling whether the bleeding is haid or istihada requires understanding on the color of bleeding. I cannot emphasize more. You ask me, how do I know now if it's istihada or haid? Because I exceed more than 15 days. That's when you learn the color of bleeding. And only the color of bleeding can determine whether that is istihada or haid, not the duration. Not after 15 days is your istihada. It's not like this. It does not work like that. But what determines your istihada or your mens is actually the color of the bleeding. So I cannot emphasize more, requires understanding of the color of bleeding. So if you ask me questions like, after 15 days, I still have my spotting, how do I know which one is istihada, which one is haid? That's when you learn the colors of bleeding. Again, applies for istihada only, those who exceed 15 days. But menstrual bleeding, as long as it's within 15 days, you don't look at the colors. Everything is mens. Okay, now. This is just briefly to give ruling whether the bleeding is haid or istihada. I know that most of you have started to get dizzy already. Okay, again, I like I mentioned, it's not easy. It's not easy. But you need to really need time to digest it. If you are having istihada, if you still have questions after this, it's because you are not learning everything yet. Okay, and I cannot answer anything without you learning. And most of you, I believe that most of you are not experiencing haid, because whenever that I teach this subject, usually it's about like only 5% or 10% are experiencing istihada. And then I will, the rest, if you don't want to learn about istihada yet, it's fine. Okay, because not everyone will go through istihada, not everyone. So usually istihada, like I mentioned, if it's not medical, it might be mental. If not, it might be because you're having ovulation. Not ovulation. Ovulation is wadi. Sorry, it's because you're having menopause as well. So menopause is one of the reasons why you're having your irregular bleeding as well. Okay, that is one of the causes as well, that you're nearing menopause. So to give ruling whether the bleeding is haid or istihada requires understanding of the color of bleeding. Okay, again, there are 14 rulings, ada 14 hukum. There are 14 rulings, but I'm going to just give you a picture of one of the rulings. That's about it. Okay, this one is not, I'm not going to elaborate here because we're not going to learn about istihada. We're going to learn about istihada in depth in a session on istihada itself. So mustahad, the Arabic category for a lady who's having irregular bleeding, istihada, the person is called mustahada. Mustahada means a lady who is experiencing istihada. Mu'tada, a lady who had regular menstrual bleeding before. Mumayza, a lady who can differentiate the color of blood. So for you to actually identify whichever is mens and whichever is istihada, you need to be mustahada, mu'tada, mumayza. You have to be able to identify the color of the bleeding. Okay, now, before I proceed, okay, I need you to understand that just how I mentioned about cycle. Okay, now, if you're having bleeding, 2 times of menstrual bleeding in a month, so that's the reason why we are not looking at the month as in the month, the calendar, January, February, March, and so on. We're looking at the cycle. Okay, now, the normal ones, like I mentioned earlier, is 27 days, 29 days, 32 days. So anything that is above 15 days, it's normal. So, okay, I just want you to imagine this. All of you have gone through, have experienced menstruation. You will find that as months went by, you will find that your mens will get more, will be more what do you call that? The timing, okay, the timing, the dates will be different from the previous month. So for example, in January, I'm having my mens on the 20th. This is just an answer, on the 20th of January. In February, I will get my mens 20th of February. Okay, that is okay. That means my cycle is 31 days. My cycle, my clean cycle is 31 days, and that is normal, 31 days. And then in February, in March, you'll get to not 20 March, I'll get my mens 18 March. And then as you go further up, you'll get the dates will be smaller and smaller and smaller. I think most of us have experienced that. The reason why that happens is because of the the cycle, okay, because of the cycle. Now in fiqh, I'm talking about fiqh and not medical, okay. If you're asking about the medical terms, I don't know, that's not my field, I don't know, I don't learn that. I don't learn medicine, but I learn fiqh. In fiqh, normal cycle, okay, that means that you don't have any problem with regular bleeding, the minimum is 15 days. That's the reason why some of the ladies, they experienced 2 times of menstruation within a period of 1 month, and they thought that they are having istihada when they are not actually having istihada. What they are experiencing is normal menstruation. Again, because in fiqh, so if you were to tell me, but my doctor say, I don't know, okay, I don't know the medical part, the medicine part, the doctor part, I don't know. I'm not a doctor, but I am teaching you the fiqh part of it. In fiqh, 15 days of clean, that's considered as normal, that's considered as natural. So that means if you're having your blood, for instance, this is January, just take this as January. I had my bleeding on 1 January and 2 January. And then suddenly on 18th of January, I'm having my bleeding again. And then I'll get panic. Oh no, I'm still in January. I'm having my bleeding again. Is this istihada? Don't worry. You have to check again. You check. That's the reason why it's best. If you're having istihada, you have to have the calendar. If you're not having istihada, you don't have to have calendar. But if you're having istihada, or you have the tendency to have the istihada, you have to have calendar. I'm one of the people who are having istihada. That's why I've been learning this a lot. I started to have my istihada when I was in my teenage years, and that's when I started to learn about istihada, and I applied on my own, on myself, because I check the blood. I look at the blood. So it's like a practical for me, because I'm a mustahada. I'm a person who have experienced istihada, and I'm still experiencing istihada. Okay, so 2 times of menstrual bleeding in a month. All right. So this lady, the lady will be panic. Okay. Oh no, I'm still in January. So the lady must check how long was she clean before the next blood. Although that is the same month. So if it's 15 days or more, okay, I'm telling you. So if you're saying that, but mine is 30 days, is it okay? Mine is 3 months, Ustazah, without having bleeding, and then the next bleeding, what is it? It's confirmed here. Okay, because the 3 months is long, it's a long time already. Now it's only 15 days of being clear from bleeding. Okay, in fiqh, again, I mentioned in fiqh, 15 days is the minimum. If you are clean for 14 days only, if you're clean for 13 days only, and then there's bleeding, that's when you have to calculate your istihada. You have to try to know which one is istihada, which one is menstruation. But if you're clean for 15 days, you are safe. Both bleeding is considered as health. But if you ask me, what if it's not 15 days, it's 13 days? That means you're having istihada. What if I have bleeding and then I got 10 days only clean and then got bleeding again? You're having istihada. How do I calculate? By looking at the color of the bleeding. How do I do that? You have to learn further in the next session. I'm just telling you, no signs of bleeding for 15 days. This bleeding and this bleeding, although it's the same month, is considered as menstruation. Okay. Uh, I'm going to go just 2 more pages. Okay, this one cannot. I just put it here lah because although that I put it in your notes, actually I wanted to delete in from the notes, but uh, I have to. I'm under the impression that maybe some of you might want to join in the istihadah part, so you can read first. Okay, you can read first, and if you don't understand, you might want to join in the istihadah to get further clarification. Okay, because I cannot teach everything or at one go. So when we talk about istihadah, look here. When we talk about istihadah, this is istihadah. There are certain things that you need to know. For those who are having istihadah, you have to learn the colors of the bleeding. You have to know the requires in tamyiz. I'm not going to explain what is tamyiz here. You have to know there are groups of mustahada. There are many groups, and different group has different hukum, has different ruling. And the colors of blood bleeding, um, the scholars have mentioned for madhab Shafi'i, he mentioned 5 colors. For other madhab, they said that there are 4 different colors. There's even one madhab that said there's 3 different colors. But for madhab Shafi'i, we have 5 different colors to determine whether it's head or it's istihada. And then how to determine the strong blood. If we have 2 sets of blood, okay, later in the istihadah part, we're going to learn how to combine the colors. Because usually the color is not just 2 colors. There are 4 colors. You know, Ustazah, my bleeding is red, and then after red, it's brown, and then there's yellow, and then there's lighter brown. You know, we have a lot of transitions in menstruation. So that's when you learn how to combine the colors of the blood. Okay, so in istihadah you learn how to combine, so there's a lot of learning there. Okay, you say, yeah, it's complicated. I don't know how else to tell you, but it's like that. All right, but later in istihadah I will teach you on how to make it easy for your life as well. Okay, although it's complicated, but there is one section where I've already brainstormed, and I've already referred to our teachers. It's like how, although that it's complicated, but how do you make it easier for your life? Okay, this is only for those who are having istihadah. For those who are having menstruation, there's no problem for you. Okay, it's not complicated at all. Menstruation is easy. Okay, that means the difficult part is only for you to be confident that when to do your obligatory bath. That's about it. But istihadah, this one is very difficult. Okay, so again, stronger blood, strong blood, weak and weaker. This one we only learn at istihadah. Look here. I'm not going to go through this because I only go through this through, I will only go through this during istihadah. And the third one group was groups of women experiencing irregular bleeding, mustahada. Okay, you look here. There's about 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, 7 here. What I'm going to teach for the istihadah section is just ruling 3 and ruling 4. If you look at mutahayirah, this is the most difficult ruling. Okay, I never teach mutahayirah except for asatiza or ustazah who have already gone through the rest as well. Okay, so I only teach this to those who have a uh, strong understanding on fiqh. Okay, for the public, it's very difficult for us to go to mutahayirah, and the public seldom gets into mutahayirah. Not to worry. Okay, so if you feel that, but if you don't tell us, how do we know? Don't worry, mutahayirah seldom, it rarely happens, but it happens. So that's the reason why teachers must know, asatiza must know. But for the public, you just take the knowledge based on your situation. But for asatiza, because we have members of public to give our answers to, and all of them are different. So that's the reason why we have to know everything. But for members of public, you're responsible for your own mens, for your own bleeding, or for your children's bleeding. Okay, if you have daughters, you're just responsible for yourself. So that's the reason why I won't touch on mutahayirah. Okay, and these are all the groups, and all of them have different rulings. All of them have different rulings. Now, the ones that I'm going to teach in istihadah, the session in istihadah, is how do you give ruling. And the ruling, again, the ruling is not 15 days. 15 days is haid, 16 and above is considered istihadah. That is not the ruling. The ruling is, if you look at the scholars' books, okay, I have not come across where scholars said that in order for you to know that is your istihadah, the bleeding 16, 17, 18, all throughout after the 16 is your istihadah. And everything that 1 until 15 is your haid. So far, I've not come across a book that says that. If you feel that you've heard of that from an ustad or ustazah, please ask them for the reference, ask them for the resources. You might want to pass it to me because, again, not everything we know, and I might have missed it. Wallahu a'lam, I might have missed it. So if your teacher or your ustazah happened to teach you like that, ask them for the resources, ask them for the references, and please pass it to me so that I can check it out. Okay, so that I can check it out and discuss with my fellow ustazats, my teachers, because so far I've not come across any book that says that. Even the book that I'm using, okay, it's not 15 days and then 16 days above is istihadah. All right, and I've already, and that is my main book, but my revision will be other classical fiqh books as well as the contemporary. I also read contemporary fiqh as well as classical fiqh. So if you are not, if you still want to follow the 15 days and 16 days and above istihadah, please find me the reference, please find me the resources and pass it to me. I will pass you the email address for you to ask questions later on if you have more questions. And or if you have other resources, other references, please pass it to us so that we can go through and we can discuss among us. That means among my friends, the ustazats, and also our teachers, inshallah. Okay, for now, this is the ruling. So the ruling is strong blood is haid, weak blood is istihadah. Again, strong blood is haid, weak blood is istihadah. Strong blood is haid, weak blood is istihadah. That is the ruling. That is the hukum. The hukum is not wajib, sunnah. No, that's not the hukum. The hukum is darah kuat adalah haid, darah lemah adalah istihadah. How do we know whether it's a strong blood? How do you know how's the weak blood? That one we learn in another session. Wallahu alam bisawab. So if you look here, the rest you can just read through. If you don't understand, that means you require, because this one is on istihadah, you require other lessons for you to understand istihadah. You can read through because I put it in my notes. Okay, this one, the don'ts or heavy menses ending, you can just read through. This one is easier for you to understand by reading. Unless you have other questions, you can put it here based on the notes that I've given you. Wallahu alam bisawab. Okay. All right. 2 minutes. I need to catch my breath. 2 minutes, and then Ustazah Shaida or Ustazah Rada can give me the questions given. So this is the solving issues on irregular bleeding. If you see on the screen there. This is the advanced. Advanced means after the introductory. Uh, those who have not gone through the introductory, it will be very difficult for them to understand the advanced. All of you have gone through the introductory. All of you are eligible to join the advanced one. The advanced is more complicated. If you think that you have the power to do so, yeah, you have the patience to do so, or you're having issues on istihadah, it's highly encouraged. But if you feel that that's it, I think this one enough already, okay, fine, it's okay. You don't have to learn about this until you feel that it's time for you to learn. Okay, because I can understand it can be very difficult. But if you feel that you want to learn more, okay, please, this will be on more advanced explanation. That means it will be more in depth. But again, must go through the introductory first. So if you have friends or you have family members who wish to go for the advanced post program without going through introductory, okay, I think they need to watch the video first. I'm not too, because this is a paid event, because the reason why it's paid event, because it's under Alwafa. So so for administrative and logistic purposes, they need to make it, they need fee for it lah. So if you have the videos cannot be shared, okay, although that the notes can be shared, but I this is an amanah from Al-Wafa. Please do not share the videos. If they want to know more, maybe you can explain to them, or you can ask them to purchase the video. The video can be, the recording. The recording can be purchased later on. Later, I think I'll get Ustazah Raudah to explain further in emails, inshallah. But for you, of course, you can proceed. Yeah, but if you were to say that I have a daughter, I want my daughter to listen at home, yeah, it's fine, never mind. I mean, I'm not too worried about that, because I'm afraid that once you get it out, for example, you pass around to your friends and it's not within your household, I'm afraid that they'll pass it around. And it's very difficult for us if we do not have the names, if there's a misunderstanding, some misconstrued on the video itself, or on the recording itself, we cannot identify who's being passing around. So we need to identify, because I've gone through this like years back. I taught differently, and somehow they pass around, and somehow it got lost in translation, and they quoted me, Ustazah Nadia said this, when I actually did not say that, and I couldn't identify who said that. Ustazah Nadia said that. At least if we have the names, we know, and I can give further clarification. So that's the reason why we don't just simply put the videos out there freely, because it's something that have different opinions, so many opinions, and other ustazah might have other ways of teaching it. So I'm just afraid that people will misunderstand or misconstrue it. Wallahu alam. Okay, Ustazah can help me, please.
Okay, Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Ustazah, this is the first question regarding discharges.
Okay.
Okay, regarding wadi, you have mentioned that if it discharge continuously, it might be infection. Will it nullify our wudu? Do we renew our wudu every fard prayer?
Yeah. So yes, just now I did mention about keputihan, or a wadi that is continuous, like every time you have that. Okay. Now this is where one thing about wadi. Okay, the ruling is the same as istihadah actually. That means you are a person who is having impurity with you at all times. In the Malay it's like this. Kita selalu menanggung najis. Selalu menanggung najis kerana selalu ada darah, kerana selalu ada wadi. So once we are always having the impurities with us, we are considered as someone who is bringing impurities everywhere we go. That means when we are doing our prayer, that impurity is still with us, is still on our panty liner, for example, is still on our cortex. Okay, so that means you are doing your prayer with impurity along. Okay, with the impurity along. to answer your question, you ask if wadi, do you have to keep on cleaning yourself and all that? Okay, the answer is yes. The answer is yes, just like istihadah. And you have to do this intention. Okay, this is the intention of istihadah. This is actually intention for those who are bringing impurity, who are bringing najis into solat. Okay, so this intention, you make the intention, and then you do your wudu. Okay, although that when you do your wudu, and then you can feel that, alamak, I feel that something is coming out from my vagina. It's my wadi, it's my keputihan. Okay, it's my discharge coming out. You just ignore it. Okay, as long as you already clean yourself, and then you take wudu, something comes out, be it bleeding. Okay, if it's istihadah bleeding, or it's your wadi. Okay, you just continue, and then you do this intention for your wudu. And then after that, when you walk, the discharge keep on coming out, just ignore it. And then you pray, but you have to immediately pray your wajib. And then after that, after finishing the wajib, that's it. And the next wajib, you have to do uh, a new ablution. So if you ask me, Ustazah, do you have to take wudu every time there's impurity, there's wadi, okay, there's infection, because you're having your infection all the way? Yeah, the answer is one wudu is only for one obligatory prayer. The same goes with istihadah. One wudu is for one obligatory prayer, but you can do as many sunnah prayer. Supplementary prayer, you can do as many. So that means after making a wudu, and you feel that you're having your discharges, your keputihan, and then you just ignore it, and then you can do your rawatib. Rawatib is the salat qabliyah, and then after that you can follow it by the obligatory zuhur, for example, and then after that you can proceed with the ba'diyah for zuhur. But for asar, you have to do your wudu all over again. Wallahu alam.
Shukran, Ustazah. Second question, does mucus plug fall under wadi?
Mucus plug, yes, it is. The mucus plug, usually it happens when a person is pregnant. Okay, so at times, yes, ovulation, yes, during pregnancy, yes, you're going to have a lot of wadi, and when that happens, you can consider it as a wadi. Wadi, one thing, okay, the best thing is that you just remember the word mucus. Okay, mucus, like a phlegm, like your mucus from your hidung, mucus. Once it's the characteristic is mucus, is considered as wadi. Okay, and mucus plug, yes, it's part of wadi as well. Wallahu alam.
Third question, on mani and mazi, after sexual intercourse and when we have done our obligatory bath, there'll be continuous discharges for at least a day. Is that considered mazi?
No, mazi only happens when you're sexually aroused at that moment. But somehow after you're doing your, okay, at times when you have your sexual intercourse, it happens to ladies when the money still flows. Okay, so I'm sorry again, explicit, but all of us are ladies, and all of us are, I believe that we are all adults here, so we have to understand this. There are instances where we have ladies, they did intercourse, and then after that, after doing the obligatory bath and all that, but they find that the money, okay, the money from the husband, for example, it keeps on flowing from the vagina, and then they will ask like, so how am I still having, is that my money? That is not our money, because our money only happens when we are ejaculating. If we keep on ejaculate afterwards, you keep on ejaculate, because there's actually a disease where a person cannot stop from ejaculating. There's a disease, so the first thing that I need you to do is to go to the doctor and get it stopped. Okay, because this is a disease. But if you're healthy, it's not a disease. It's just that your after sexual intercourse, and then there's discharges. Usually the discharges is from the money of the husband. So you just leave it. Okay, you just leave it, and you do not have to like keep on mandi hadas. No. Okay, unless that is your ejaculation, that's a different story. Okay, so for mazi, it happens at that moment. That means you're sexually aroused, and then it happens. But afterwards, unless you know that I mean, we know ourselves whether we're sexually aroused or sexually ejaculating. Okay, but if you know that you're not having that, that means it's fine. Okay, that means the discharges, it's nothing, it's not mazi, unless you're at that moment you're having sexual arousal. Wallahu a'lam.
Shukran, Ustazah. Now, questions on qada salat. First question for Lady C. Just now Ustazah mentioned, shared about, I'm not sure which slide. For Lady C who fasted when she didn't bleed for 5 days, but she's still within the 15 days of menstrual period, how about salat? Does she need to qada?
Oh no, solat no need to qada. Why? Because when you're having your menses, you don't solat, right? You don't have to qada your solat. You only qada for your puasa, your fasting during Ramadan. But for the C, if you do not do your prayer, and then, for example, this 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, there's no blood also. That means you're clean at day 3. If you're clean at day 3, and all the way, and then you waited until the 10th day, for example, and then there's no blood. In this diagram, there's blood, right? But just imagine that there's no blood here. That means you actually stop on the 3rd day. So you do not salat, or you do not fast in Ramadan here. This one you have to qada your salat, because you are not in a state of heat. You are not in a state of heat. But if the bleeding comes out again, means you are in the state of heat. Okay, it's easier to see this way lah. If it's sandwiched between two bleeding, that means this is the heat, state of heat. But no, if it's not sandwiched between two bleeding, it's considered as you're already clean. And if you leave your prayer here, you have to qada, because you are not in a state of hadath. Wallahu alam.
Shukran, Ustazah. Second question, in slide 6, what if a lady does not do her prayers from day 5 to day 9 because she is still within the 15-day cycle and following Imam Nawawi? Does she need to qada her prayers?
Again, the answer is the same as my previous answer. Prayer. Okay, so you have to understand, this is in the bab tahara. Bab tahara. You only do when you're having your menses, you don't pray. That means you do not need to qada your prayer. For ladies, if you're having your menses, you do not pray. Your prayers, you don't need to qada your prayers. So in this case, this lady, she's in a state of heat, definitely in a state of heat. So does she need to qada her prayer? The answer is no. Only qada fasting, because she is in the state of heat. This one you need to digest slowly. If you don't understand what I mean, that means you have to learn, not this part, but you have to learn purification. I'm going to show you something. You have to understand. It means that you have not gone through the basic of hold on now, where is it? The basic of purification. Purification also has its basic. Okay, right. This one, this one is free for you to learn about the hadath and also najis. Okay, please, there's an English version too if you don't understand Malay, but I recommend you to listen to the Malay version because Malay version, when I explain in Malay, it's easier for me to make the explanation more flowy. So please go to this link, and there'll be the recording. You just need to enter the password, and then there's the password. Okay, you don't have to pay, just listen to it. It's 2 hours of explanation. If you want to know about the solat and bersuci, or purification in solat. Okay, so if you have if you need to revise, okay, I believe that all of you have learned, but if you want to revise, you can revise by watching that video. Wallahu alam.
Shukran, Ustazah. There are 3 questions regarding spotting.
Okay.
The first one, if we usually have spotting on certain months, then heavy flow on other months, the spotting months is it still considered menstruation?
Yes, as long as it's within the period of 15 days, it's considered as menstruation. Yeah, it happens. Okay, at times ours is heavy flow, at times it's just spotting. It's fine. That's not a concern at all. That's not a problem. There's no issue at all. Again, if it's menstruation, you don't have to worry about the color of the blood, whether it's weak, whether it's strong. You don't have to worry about that. As long as you're within the period of 15 days, that means you're in menstruation. The issue here is when you're having istihada. Istihada is the difficult part. But for the menstruation, it's fine. You don't have to worry about it. Mostly, they don't have problems with istihada. It's just menstruation. Only that they're having spotting and pauses. That makes them um, that makes them want to know lah what's wrong with them. There's nothing wrong. You're perfectly healthy. Wallahu alam.
Second question, what if my blood doesn't stop at all, like brown, then spotting, then red, then back to brown, but no days with clean? How do I count the 15-day cycle?
That one, not at all means after exceed 15 days lah. Okay, I take it that you exceed 15 days. That means you are mustahada, you are istihada, you are experiencing istihada. So that one you have to learn in istihada. But what I can say is that the first ruling for it, the first hukum for it, the easiest hukum is the strong blood is haid and the weak blood is istihada. But the problem here is that you cannot make it alternate. For example, you see strong blood 5 days and then you take it as haid, and then you see the next 5 days is istihada, you take it as istihada, and then the third section, another 15 days is strong blood and you take it as haid again, and then the other 5 days, it makes it a total of 20 days, is weak blood and then you take it as istihada. It cannot be alternate like that. And how do you, we will learn this later in the istihada part, istihada section. I'm not teaching it here. This is just the introduction of istihada, because one thing about istihada, you have to learn more apart from just knowing the duration. Wallahu alam. So the person who asked, please join the istihada. Inshallah, we're going to learn a lot on prolonged bleeding and combination of colors. Like you mentioned, you have many colors, right? Yes, that happens. I mean, most istihada, it happens that way. There are so many colors. But I will also teach you how to not panic and just give rule that is easy for your situation. Wallahu alam. I'm not going to make it more difficult. It's going to be easier. Wallahu alam.
Third question is, having brown discharge before and after heat is also considered spotting?
Yes. But as long as it's within 15 days period, any color, although that's just a bit of it, just like at times it's had a stain, just a brown stain at your panty liner, and you cannot even feel it. You just see the color. That's considered as mens. That's considered as menstruation. That means you still cannot solat, you still cannot pray, cannot puasa bulan Ramadan, fast during Ramadan. So that means as long as it's within the 15 days period, however the characteristic is considered as menstruation. Wallahu alam.
Okay, next question regarding intercourse. Is it dosa if we have intercourse during the non-bleeding period, as we thought our period is over and have already mandi hadas?
Yes, this is a very good question. I forgot to include this. Thank you so much for asking this question. I mean, all questions are very good, okay? But this question I forgot to include. Now, since you're asking this question, I'm going to tell everyone. Allah yubarik fik. So when you talk about intercourse during the no bleeding, it's going to be sinful. If you're having bleeding and you have intercourse, that is sinful and that is not healthy as well. It's unhygienic, it's unsanitary, it's not healthy. But if you're not having bleeding and then you did your intercourse thinking that your bleeding has stopped, and then you did your don't forget to do your obligatory bath, right? And then you do your obligatory bath and then you feel that I think finished already, and then you did your sexual intercourse, and then somehow few hours later you're bleeding, or the next day you're bleeding, or next 2 days you're bleeding. It shows that you're in a state of haid. That means you're doing your sexual intercourse during your state of haid. Am I sinful? Are you sinful? The answer is no. In fiqh, anything that we don't know, anything that we forget is considered as not sinful. You're not accountable for it. So that means you're not sinful. So don't worry about it because you don't know. But again, you might want to wait until 15 days at least, okay, or wait until your usual period. For example, I'm having my menstruation for 3 days, but I know my menstruation seldom stops at day 3. It's always between 9, 8, 9, 10, for example. So I know that there's a huge tendency that my mens will come out again. So I will, although that there's no bleeding, but I will refrain myself from having sexual intercourse because I know my body, usually there will be bleeding afterwards. Okay, so again, sinful or not, as long as you don't know, wallahu alam, you're not sinful.
Questions regarding when to do the obligatory bath.
Mhm.
The first one, when do we actually wait to bathe the obligatory, to do the obligatory bath? By the end of the last day menses or by the hour? For example, by asar time.
Okay, so usually it's like this. Okay, so there are many ways. There are many ways because there are many opinions. So I will just give you one of the opinions lah. So it's easier. So that means if you see that, but my ustazah said something else, that is correct also. That means your ustazah is correct also. If an ustazah, one thing about ustazah is an amanah for us to really know about what we are saying. Then we can actually convey the message. Actually, that's an amanah from our end. So if you say that my ustazah say it's like this, that means it's correct. Again, there are so many opinions. But from my end, okay, from my part, from what I heard from my teachers, it's like this. When do we do our obligatory bath? Usually we wait for the next. Okay, one of the opinions uh, is that we wait for the next prayer. So, for example, I I I look at my panty liner. Okay, I check during Zuhur. For example, I check during Zuhur, and I find that during Zuhur it's clean already. It's pure white. That means my panty liner is pure white, no stain at all. And when I do my istinja, okay, when I clean myself, there's no traces of blood at all. So it's clean. So what I can do is that I can wait until Asar. I can wait until Asar. And if Asar, I'm still clean, I am still clean, I can do my obligatory bath during Asar and I pray my Asar and I also pray and I also pray my Zuhur. And that means I can actually jamak. I can actually jamak my Zuhur with my Asar. Again, this part, why do we jamak? Okay, you can look at this slide, the last slide here. Okay, refer to this one. Menses ending and when to qada solat. Refer to this one. Okay, you can jamak, you can qada, but okay lah, use the qada is fine because at least there's a reference here. Okay, so that's one opinion. That means you wait for the next one during Asar. Okay, and then you're still clean, you can bathe. But the other opinion is that you wait 24 hours. That means you wait for the next Zuhur. You check your Zuhur, clean lah during Zuhur, very clean, no traces of blood. You wait for 24 hours the next Zuhur. So that's another opinion. Which one for you? Which one do you want to follow? Anyone can. Don't worry about it, okay, because there are many opinions this part. If you ask me, I personally will wait for, I don't wait 24 hours, I just wait for the next solat. So that because if you wait for 24 hours and then you get to know that you're really really clean, that means you have to qada all the other prayer. Means the yesterday Zohor you find yourself clean, and then the 24 hours the next Zohor you find yourself clean. That means the Asar, the yesterday's Asar, Maghrib, Isha, Subuh, you have to qada everything. Okay, so it's like a lot of qada. So usually, personally, I will use the next solat. That means if I find myself clean Zohor, okay, I wait for Asar. Asar still clean, I will make my Asar and then I will qada my Zohor. Again, you can choose any any way that you can. Wallahu alam. I use the first one because it's more safe and tak payah qada banyak-banyak. You don't have to qada a lot. Wallahu alam.
Okay, the next question is also similar, and I think Ustazah have already answered, but I'll just relay the question. How to make sure that we are suci before we do our obligatory bath?
How to make sure? Like I mentioned earlier, okay, you see, you use your panty liner or your panty or your kotek, you see, hey, there's no blood, putih. And then after you istinja, and then there's no traces of blood, or you use a tissue paper, you just do that your private part, there's no trace of blood, that's considered as suci. Wallahu alam.
Okay, shukran Ustazah. The next one is on how to count the clean cycle. Do we have to follow prayer time to count for the clean cycle, which is minimum 15 days? For example, I did ghusl and prayed asar. I should be clean for the next 15 days during asar time. That's the question.
Okay, sorry. Okay, Ustazah, can you?
So this is on counting the clean cycle. Do we have to follow prayer time to count for the clean cycle? Means we need to count 15 days of clean period.
Oh, okay, the clean. Okay, and then?
So for example, I did ghusl after my head, I did ghusl and prayed
Okay.
asar. So
Okay.
it's my clean cycle from that asar to another asar after 15 days.
Correct. Yes. You answered your question. That is correct. Asar to asar. Yes.
Okay, next regarding opinion of the scholars, can we follow both Imam Nawawi and Imam Rafi'i within the 15 days at one time?
It's best not to, but if that is easier for you, the answer is yes. That means it's like this. I can understand your question. At first, you think that, okay, I want to use Rafi'i. So that means I waited, I just had my menses for 3 days and then suddenly clean from bleeding. I wanted to use Rafi'i. I will wait until 7 days. And then 7 days, you're still clean. Okay, so 4, 5, 6, 7, you're still clean. Oh, now I want to use Nawawi because I know that maybe usually is my mens is until 10 days, but I don't want to wait until 10 days lah. Lama sangat banyak kena qada. So many prayers for me to qada. So I don't want to wait until 10 days. I just use Imam Nawawi. I will make my obligatory prayer at the 7th day or the 4 days of clean from bleeding. And then you do that. The answer is yes, you can do that. So you look at your situation again. You cannot just, and not everyone wants to use this kind of situation. But if you think that it's easier for you, for your situation, okay, and you are confident with it, then you can follow that, and it's not sinful. Don't worry about it because we also don't know. Again, it's a guessing game. It's a guessing game, and most of the time we will be wrong. But do not worry about accountability because anything that is a guessing game, we wouldn't know. Wallahu alam.
Second question, if we were to follow Imam Nawawi and did obligatory bath, which is we salat and then we fast, and then realize we had menses the following day, do we need to qada the salat or the fast?
That means menstruation, right? Menstruation, because you follow Imam Nawawi and then you have that one day you fast in Ramadan, right? And then you pray. Because you're still in a state of hate, again, this one you really have to digest. You have to look whether you're in a state of hate or not. Since your bleeding comes out again, that means the clean sandwich between two bleeding, that means you're in a state of hate. So you don't have to qada your prayer, but you have to qada your fast during Ramadan. Only for Ramadan fasting, not the sunnah fasting. Sunnah fasting is fasting only. Wallahu alam.
Okay, these are questions on istihadah. The first one, for istihadah, do we pray after 15 days and do the obligatory bath, even if on the 16th day the blood flow is still heavy?
No, that one you have to know the colors of the bleeding. If the 16 day is heavy, that means that is your mens. So the 16 day, you cannot pray. So where's your istihadah? I think it's somewhere before that. Somewhere before, it's not something like it's going to be heavy throughout. But there are instances where there are ladies experiencing just that. I have only one color. I cannot differentiate. That's when we learn at the istihadah session later. Okay, if you cannot differentiate between strong and weak blood because you only have one color. For example, my menstruation, my bleeding, sorry, not menstruation, my bleeding is prolonged bleeding, but only one color. That's when we learn how to give ruling to that, but I'm not teaching it now. So if you ask me now, 16 days, can I just consider that as istihadah? It doesn't work that way. I just explained just now, right? It doesn't work that way. So usually if it's very heavy, most likely it's your mens. So when's my istihadah? Maybe the previous part, there's a weak blood. That is your istihadah. Allahu alam. Again, I cannot answer it here thoroughly. So later on in the istihadah section, then I can actually give more clarification.
Second question, what happens if the color of the blood is red for more than 15 days? For example, 20 days straight red blood.
The same. I just mentioned just now, right, Ustazah Shaidah? Is that the same one?
Yeah.
Or just one color, or red? Yeah, that one is istihadah. Definitely istihadah. But how do you rule it? If it's just one color, you cannot use ruling 1. You can only use ruling 2. I'm not elaborating it here because it's going to be very confusing to others as well.
Okay.
If they are not experiencing istihadah.
Okay. Third question regarding istihadah also, if you want to address it briefly, Ustazah. Sometimes traveling affects my menses and my clean cycle is less than 15 days. Is it considered istihadah?
Yes, that one is another type of istihadah. We call it imra'ah alaiha baqiyatut tuhur, the Arabic word. Subhanallah, there's a lot to learn, isn't it? Okay, so this lady, this is a very rare occasion. Wah, rasa macam X-Men tak? Very rare occasion. Not everyone can experience imra'ah alaiha baqiyatut tuhur. Okay, this is another, it's istihadah, but a different type of istihadah. And it's a very, usually if I teach, lessons on this, there's like 1 or 2 ladies, they will encounter this. Okay, this is another ruling. Okay, please, if you can join the istihadah session, I'm going to address that. It's called imra'ah alaiha baqiyatut tuhur, a lady who has, apa Ustazah Syahidah? Baqiyatut tuhur. Melayu dia I know, English dia tak.
Balance of
Yeah, okay. So a lady who's having a balance of cleanliness. Okay, it's weird. If you translate, it's very weird. The Malay is like this: wanita yang mempunyai baki suci. The Malay is nicer. Wanita yang mempunyai baki suci. The English is like a lady who has balance, balance in purity. I don't know lah. I don't know how to. I need to refer back. Okay, I need to ask one of my friends. She's better in the English part, so I will ask her. Okay, so this lady, please. I hope that the sister can join us for the istihadah. I'm going to address that. Allahu alam. And yes, you're having istihadah.
Okay, this question just came in. If a lady is having discharge in her normal days, how can she make sure her suci day after haid to do her obligatory bath?
Sorry?
If a lady is having discharge in her normal days,
Okay.
how can she make sure when is her suci day after haid to do her obligatory bath? Maybe
Because,
this one.
yeah, this one is the difference between wadi and the ending part of menstruation, right? Okay, now wadi, the characteristic usually it is a mucus-like. Mucus-like, that means the characteristic is where you can actually how to say that? Okay. To make it easier for you to understand, I don't know whether you can understand or not, but I just try my very best. I've asked this question to a number of friends who are really focusing on this topic. Okay, I have one friend, her masters is on bleeding. Amazing, huh? The masters is just solely on bleeding. So I asked her, how do you actually know whether the ending of menstruation is actually your menstruation bleeding, because it's the color is always like yellowish stain. How do you differentiate between wadi? Because wadi is yellowish as well. And also the difference between wadi and the menstruation, the end part of it. And then I've received a lot of answers from different teachers, but hers, that means there are many opinions lah. I have a lot of answers, but hers, to me, hers is the easiest for me to understand and for me to impart to all of you. So what she said is that you might want to see how does it stop. Okay, so for example, if you're having your transition, your bleeding transition, men's transition, it's brownish. Okay, brown is definitely men's. brown is men's. Brownish, and then after that, from brownish, suddenly is yellow. So the transition is brownish to yellow. Okay, brownish to yellow. That is, the yellow is considered as your mens. That means you're still having your mens. But if the transition is like this, you have your stain, the brownish stain, and then it's clean, white. White is an indication that your mens ended already. White, and then suddenly there's yellowish, just yellowish, without any traces of brownish or reddish colored, just yellow. That yellow, because the transition is from suci, the transition is from white clean, that means the yellowish is the wadi. That's what she told me. That's because it's very difficult for us to see. Okay, some of the teachers said that it's easy, you just see that it's totally purely white panty liner, that means your mens ended. But if still got yellowish is within the period of 15 days, just consider is your mens. Okay, so that's another explanation from another teacher. Wallahu alam. So which one do you want to follow? I follow the ones that my friend said, the transition of it. But if you find it very difficult and it's within the 15 days of period, if it's yellowish in color, just take it as your mens. Wallahu alam.
Shukran, Ustazah. The following questions are regarding Tahara.
Okay.
Okay, so the first one, how do we do laundry with our undergarments? I have been told to wash the family's undergarments separately from the rest of the laundry for fear of najis.
Depending on how do you wash it. Okay, so all right, so you have to look at your type of machine. Now I bet all of you are using washing machine. I'm not too sure whether some of you might still be washing using your hands manually, or you go to the river and wash. I don't know whether you're still doing that, but I think most of us, we are using washing machine. Okay, now talking about najis. Okay, once we put a soil najis, soil, but soil najis, kalau soil not najis, it's a different story. That one is fine. Soil means there's a feces, there's a pee, there's a wadi, there's a mazi. Okay, those are najis. There's a muntah, there's a what's muntah, vomit and all that, right? Blood. Okay, so these are all najis. So if you want to know, okay, what are the najis, listen to the video that I've already given you the link. Okay, that's when I describe what are the najis. If just dirt from the sand or mud or on or mirabos, that one is not najis, right? That was just stain. That's about it. Now, if you have that in your clothes, does not necessarily mean your undergarment only lah. Your clothes, your undergarment, any clothes. And then if you were to put it with other linens, okay, with other clothes, other clothes, okay, you have to ensure that your machine can do the rinsing part. That means if the washing is just one time without rinsing, that means you get the najis all over. Your other clothes will get the najis as well, and ended up you have a najis clothes together with at first it's just one panty, now the whole thing is najis as well. But if the washing machine is like one round, and then it what do you call that, it drain out the water, and then it rinse again, that means the najis has gone already, and then the rinsing part is where you're going to rinse it again. Okay, so double, triple, that one is fine. So you have to see how your washing machine works. Does it has a rinse or not? But if your najis is something that you need to, for example, your head is your bleeding, right? Your blood. So you have bleeding stain on your panties. You don't put it with other clothes before you try your very best to take out the bleeding stain first, and then you have tried your very best and it's still got just a bit of stain, just leave it. Okay, the key point here is that you have to put in your effort to take out the stain first. If it's feces, take out the feces first. If it's pee, okay, at times maybe our children they pee on their clothes, you have to rinse first the pee, and then you put inside the what do you call that, washing machine. Okay, so that means you have to see whether there's najis or not. If your panty has no najis, it's fine. Just put it together with everything else. It's fine. The problem here is whether there's najis or not. Okay, not whether the panty. The problem is not the panty. So if people say that, oh, your panty must put different separately. But if the panty has no najis, it's fine, because some of us, we use panty liner. So then our najis is at the panty liner, for example. And then after that, we throw the panty liner, and then our panty has no najis. So it's not about the panty. It's about whether there's najis or not. Wallahu alam.
Shukran, Ustazah. Our last question, if we do not wear panty liner for the day and there is discharge, will wiping off the wadi from the panty liner, from the panties suffice to perform prayers?
No, it's not enough. You cannot just wipe. That's the reason why panty liner. Tapi panty liner pun, I mean, you have to come up with, you have to buy, and then at times some people say that it's not what do you call that, healthy. Wallahu alam. There are so many opinions out there. The answer is, it's not sufficient. Okay, it's not enough for you to just wipe it off, because one thing about this is, wadi is najis mutawasita. You want to know what najis mutawasita is? Go through the lesson that I've given you the link. There, in there, I explain to you what najis mutawasita is. Najis mutawasita is not enough for you to just wipe it. You have to clean it with water. That means, what do you call that? Allahumma salli ala Muhammad. With water lah, with water. That means you cannot use wipes. You cannot just wipe it. You have to use a flowing water to clean it. That's najis mutawasita. So if you want more explanation of najis mutawasita, that's why Ustazah Shahidah put there, bab tahara, because this is not under the topic of bleeding. This is under the topic of tahara. That means the foundation of tahara, you have to be very well versed in it as well. So I really want to encourage all of you to listen to the video. It's 2 hours. I talk about najis and nullification. Wallahu alam.
Jazakumullah khairul jaza, Ustazah. Those are all the questions, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so again, if you want to ask questions, use because I find that I'm not opening up my chat. So if you want to ask questions, please use the Slido. If not, you have to put it for everyone to see, because Ustazah Shahidah will need to read your question. Because if you give me privately, I'm not reading anything at the moment, because it's easier for me to answer questions when it's being said out. Okay, I give you another, because we already, it's already 1:59, but I just give, Ustazah Shahidah, are you okay? Just I will give another 1 minute for last questions.
Can, Ustazah.
Okay, 1 minute. So I'll wait for question. After 1 minute, there's no question, I'm going to end it. Bismillah. Okay. Anyone who wants to ask verbally, you can unmute yourself. Just because I would love to take your questions now. So this is a time where you ask me questions. It's okay if it has got nothing to do with bleeding. It's fine as well, as long as it's within the scope of tahara, purification. Okay. I don't want you to ask me about your marriage or other topics. All right, just as long as within, like just now, right? The question on, can I wash my undergarments with other clothes? That kind of question is good. Is still under tahara. So if you want to ask verbally, you can do so. Just unmute yourself.
There's one question, when will the next class on istihadah be?
The next class on Instagram will be next Saturday. Next Saturday, so you can WhatsApp again the same number. The timing is the same, 10 to 2 p.m. But you have to be prepared mentally. Yeah, I maybe you might want to have your breakfast first. Have to have water with you. It's gonna get deep, more difficult, but it's fun. Once you know, it's fun. And I'm gonna teach you how to not to make yourself panic, although that is complex, it's difficult, but I will give you some tips on how to make it easy on your situation, inshallah. But if you think that enough, I don't want to know more on istihadah because dah pening kepala, you're having headache already, it's okay, it's fine. You don't have to, if you're not ready yet, you don't have to follow us for the istihadah. Okay, what am I going to teach on istihadah? The first thing is I'm going to elaborate more on the istihadah itself and the categories, and then the syarat tamyiz, and then I'm going to talk about the difference between istihadah as well as the imra'ah alaiha baqiyatu tuhur. There's two different types of istihadah ladies, and then and how to combine the colors of the bleeding, and of course the last part will be Q&A session.
Ustazah, one question.
Yes.
If we go out, is it okay to simpan wudu and perform our prayers without retaking the wudu when there is no discharge on the sanitary pad?
Go out, simpan wudu, perform prayer without taking wudu, there's no discharge. Yes, you can do so. We call it actually, okay, for example, if you're okay, one thing about discharge, one thing about wadi, it does not happen every time. It only happens during we know that we're having the discharges wadi. If you're healthy, if you're having a fungal infection, that's a different story. If you're healthy, usually our discharges will come slightly before, few days before we're having our mens, or after our menstruation. So few days of after menstruation, you're going to have discharges. But most of the time, we are dry. Okay, we are dry. That means we don't have any discharges at all. We don't have, and most likely, but I feel wet, Ustazah. That is not your wadi. That is your rutubatul faraj. And rutubatul faraj is not najis. That means if you have wudu, your wudu is still there. Tak batal wudu. Your wudu is not nullified. And then that means you can do your prayer with that wudu, although you're wet, because that most likely that is your moisture of vagina, especially we live in a humid country. And then if your work requires you to just sit down, or you're just sit down, so it's like it can perspire, your vagina can perspire. So if it's just wet without any mucus, or you cannot see the characteristic of wadi, that means it's just your wudu faraj. So if you do not have any discharge, okay, you're dry, or it's just your rutubatul faraj, you can keep your wudu as long as you want. As long as it's not nullified, that means you're keeping a wudu, you can do as many salat. There are moments where, especially during Umrah, we keep our wudu until the next prayer, because it's very difficult to take wudu during Umrah. And you know yourself, you know your body, whether it's your wadi or your rutubatul faraj. So the answer is yes, you can keep your wudu, you can pray. So for example, you don't have discharge, you have your wudu from subuh. You can use it from zohor, as long as it's not nullified, as long as your wudu is not nullified. What is nullification for wudu? Okay, that is in bab tohara. I think you can actually Google it. Okay, what nullifies wudu, but don't forget to put what nullifies wudu, Imam Shafi'i. Okay, you can read through what nullifies your wudu. As long as it's not nullified, okay, you can use your wudu up until Isha even. All right, but of course you need to go toilets and all. Wallahu alam.
That's all, Ustazah. Jazakumullah khairan jazak.
Okay. Thank you so much. I hope that I've answered all questions. I've answered all your doubts. And if you think that's enough for you for today's session, it's fine. I hope that at least you have the foundation already. After this, if you need to ask questions, feel free to do so. Okay, but you can email. I'm going to put the email address here. Usually, Ustazah Shahida will help me to answer questions, because she's her field is Sharia. So Shahidah, her field is Sharia. So she has the knowledge to answer everything, all questions. So don't feel free, okay, because you already had your lessons. We will answer questions from you if you go to lessons. Now you have gone through lessons. Thank you for your patience. It's 4 hours, no kidding, 4 hours. Amazing. Thank you so much for being patient. Okay, after this, you want to ask questions, you can go to the email ilmu@wafa.production. I already put it at the chat box, and so Shahida will answer you. If somehow the question is complex, I will usually discuss with Ustazah Shahida for the answer, inshallah. Thank you so much. I really, I'm sorry if some of you have DM me questions I don't answer, because when it comes to fiqh, I have to be very careful. I have to be very careful. If not, because this is about rulings, about hukum, so I don't want to make mistake on that. I'll try to lessen mistake. Of course, I do mistakes. I make mistakes too, but I try my very best to lessen the mistake. Thank you so much. And if anything, there's the email. So inshallah, I hope that you can listen to the you can go to, like, I just show you again. So this is the, okay, there. This is the Alwafa FB, tinyurl.com/kuliah fiqh Ustazah Nadia. Okay, you can actually listen on the purification part. The Malay, there's English, but if you can, I think Malay explanation, my Malay explanation is better actually from my English. I'm still struggling, but I hope that everyone is clear. Thank you so much, and let's make dua for each other. May Allah open our heart. Is our journey in learning. Okay, because one thing about learning, seeking knowledge, is one of the easiest way for us to always be in the pathway towards Jannah. Amin ya Rabbal Alameen. Inshallah, we're gonna close with tasbih kafarah and suratul as. Subhanakallahumma wa bihamdika asyhadu an la ilaha illa anta astaghfiruka wa atubu ilaik. Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Wal 'asri innal insana lafi khusr illa alladhina amanu wa 'amilus solihati wa tawassaw bil haqq wa tawassaw bis sabr. Wa sallallahu ala sayyidina Muhammad wa sallam walhamdulillahi rabbil alamin. Thank you so much. Sorry, I just opened my chat. Okay, just one last, because I don't want to tinggal apa-apa. Alhamdulillah, I think I already answered everything. Kan Ustazah Syahidah, I answered everything?
Yes, Ustazah, Alhamdulillah.
Okay, so I put my chat just for a while. Give me 30 seconds, I just go through, takut tertinggal apa-apa. Okay, I think I've answered everything. Thank you so much, everyone. Okay, yes. Jazakumullah khair jaza. Yeah, my pleasure. Okay, I hope it's beneficial, inshallah. Okay. Assalamualaikum warahmatullahi wabarakatuh.
Waalaikumsalam warahmatullahi wabarakatuh. Barakallahu fikum, Ustazah.
Wa fikum, shukran Ustazah Syahidah, Ustazah Rawdah, for taking the time to join us and help me.